Alright, so I've just got to start off by saying I love Christopher Nolan. Like, most of his films I really, really love. But before Interstellar came out, I haven't seen two early ones. I haven't seen the one Insomnia or whatever that's called. I haven't seen that, but everyone I've seen of his, I fucking love so much. And then Interstellar came out, I remember being like, oh yeah, not for me. And then ever since then, each film, I mean, it's just been Dunkirk, but I was just like, that didn't really work for me either. Have not seen Tenet, because the world ended and I'm not allowed to see it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But, not about that. At the time, I watched Interstellar, didn't love it. Really, the ending just, not for me. So rewatching it, it's one of the things I was kind of dreading it all week, where I was kind of I've got to be in the mood. If I put this on when I'm not in the mood, I just won't want to watch it. I'll be like, sad man with corn, they're all eating corn. I don't want to watch it, then there's a bookcase and I don't like it. And rewatching it...
Can I just say quickly,
yeah.
I just want to interject, that, what you just said, I think collectively is the internet's opinion of this film. But the way you just articulated it, that sad corn, yeah, it's... Anyway, sorry.
Magic Science bookcase, yeah.
Yeah.
So rewatching it, it's probably the most incredible looking and sounding film I've ever seen that it just doesn't work for me at the end. It really, it falls apart for a couple of reasons, and it's not just bookcase and sad man. Although sad man with the bookcases at the end doesn't visually work for me, but so much to a certain level works for me. I remember ages ago I was saying something. I was just something. Anne Hathaway's love conquers the universe, and his love is more important than dimensions and science. And I was like, no. And you're like, actually, no. You've misinterpreted what I think this scene is saying, potentially. And rewatching it, I really loved that moment where it's this woman who's like, maybe her fucking ex-boyfriend is on that, and she's like, yeah, fuck yeah. I mean, that idea of seeing him excites me. And I was like, no, I love this moment. It was just slowly coming on her. It's the first moment where we really get all her character in just one moment, which I kind of think is kind of interesting as well.
Yeah.
But at the end, Matthew McConaughey's like, remember what Anne Hathaway said earlier? How love is more important than anything? He says it again, and that kind of stuff, she's looking at it, it says stay, and suddenly just because the movie's climactic, and she's like, it's you, Father. You're the ghost. And a lot of that stuff just doesn't... For me, it's like one element, and I'd forgotten throughout the start of the movie. She's like, there's a ghost pushing my books off my shelf. And I'm like, oh, it's Matthew McConaughey in the bookshelf realm. And I've forgotten how integral it is to everything. So I don't know how you just kind of get rid of that. But I don't know, the corn stuff, the dust world, the worst apocalypse I could possibly imagine. Where you're just eating corn. Just there's a scene where they're all eating dinner and they all have 3 plates.
Fritters and...
It's corn. It's different corn and different corn, and I suddenly realised it's like, this isn't a potato where you can do anything with it. That made me really sad, and I was like, I like this world, how they built it. But I don't know, the music, the score, I don't know, for instance, the first world they go to. That is some of the most incredible visuals I've ever seen. Where they land, it's just water. They step out, so the water's only up there. Yeah. And it's knee deep. It looks real. I can only imagine that he just flooded a football field or did something insane.
It's a real place.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where?
I can't remember, but I was watching the special features last night.
Awesome, yeah.
They went to a real place, and Anne Hathaway's
actually knee deep in...
Anne Hathaway's bodysuit didn't keep her warm, and she got hypothermia while they were shooting that, because apparently the water is freezing.
Yeah. So I don't know, that scene, and they're like, he's like, they're not mountains, it's a wave. He's like, don't worry.
Because of the gravity from the black hole, all the water is just spiraling in endless waves and waves around this planet. It makes perfect sense,
I appreciate that. I did a little research, and I remember you saying a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this movie quite a lot, because I always say I hate it. But I don't know, just even that planet, it's just wave, and then he looks at the wave, he's like, it's not a mountain, it's a wave, and then he just kind of realizes, when he's like, oh, it's going the other way, don't even stress, and he just clicks. He turns around, and the wave just... and the music swells and builds, and you just see this huge wave come. All that sequence, all that stuff, it's the best thing in the world. But then I just have part of me just going like, this movie's taking itself so seriously that I'm not able to. It conjures up thoughts like, all right, why the fuck did you land? Why didn't, like, if there's the time dilation, they get there and it's just ocean. Before they land, it's all ocean, and as soon as they land, they're like, oh my babe, we should leave.
They're going after the other ship.
No, like, yeah, for sure, but they're just, I don't know, things like that. It just feels like, I don't know, like, just little elements like that. I just felt like didn't kind of, I don't know.
So what? I'm confused.
Okay,
what element didn't work?
With the I don't know, it just, I guess simply the idea that they like absolutely had to go down to get this woman's info, which for the rest of the movie, for me, didn't seem to play any part. They're all like, it was useless. She's got the info and it's sterile and barren. I'm like, what actual information did you get that wasn't just, it's a planet of water? Because I got that from when they first break through the clouds. And I don't know, it just kind of made me just go like, oh, okay. Like, but the dramatic moments of it.
But I think it actually makes perfect sense. So the lady entered the time dilation zone, landed on the planet, and her ship was destroyed by a wave almost immediately after arriving.
Yeah.
Which is
but she clicked the button that it's a good planet button. That's what confused me, I guess, as well. Because Matt Damon tricked them by clicking it when he shouldn't have. I love that as well. That's what a cunt.
Yeah,
that's good as. But she clicked it, saying it was good. Then she crashed.
They say that it was just loot. Well, I think she arrived.
Okay, I must have missed the line.
I think she arrived and established the planet might have been okay for a moment. I don't know.
Right. Okay.
I think it was more like, there's enough here to keep going. But they said that it was endlessly repeating on some kind of echo because of the time dilation in that area. You know what I really think would have been effective in demonstrating what was going on with the planet is like, as Matthew McConaughey's ship starts flying towards the planet away from the Endeavour spacecraft, they should have shown it slowing.
Yeah.
And the guy on the ship who waits there for 23 years just watching it slow come to a crawl. But then we cut in to the ship and then they're normal because time is of the observer. So then we get a real sense of that separation and the idea that, and there's, I think this has been often repeated that like there's a ticking clock as soon as they come into the planet.
I saw one of the songs called TikTok as well.
Every tick is like a day on Earth.
Right.
If you add it all up.
What's the exact? Is it
an hour is 7 years?
An hour is 7 years,
something
right?
Like that.
And so they're down there for 3 hours then.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
A little bit over. Yeah.
We were talking before about
because the ship's engines get flooded.
Yeah. We were talking before record about like just things where you remember a thing like that and when you rewatch it, like, oh, it's not. It's interesting what kind of feels away. We're discussing it in terms of we've watched a lot of Doctor Who recently. And what stayed with me the most is the music. And you're like, yeah, maybe that's the same. This movie to me, 10 years ago, I watched it whenever the fuck it came out, 7 years ago. The one thing I remember being, it was like, I hated the last 40 minutes, no good with Love as a Bookcase or whatever. But what really stuck out to me was there's a scene where he gets off Ocean Planet and there's this heartbreaking moment where his family just goes through their lives and they've lived their lives without him. And I remember thinking that was the most emotional part of the movie. And it started, and I remember just being like, oh no, we're already here. It was probably the least affecting moment in comparison. And I was just like, I think it's because I've hyped it up. Where I'm like, Interstellar's a movie I've disliked for years, but there's one great scene, one perfect scene, in my brain. And then rewatching it, I'm like, no, the movie itself is perfect. Like every time there's a spaceship doing anything, my favourite bit's the loading bay scene.
The docking.
When it's spinning.
Yeah.
And at first you're just
like... The
music
is incredible.
But just before the music kicks in where it's spiralling and he's just like, oh no. And then she's like, oh no. Then he's like, we've got to dock. And then the music's like swells up and builds. And
organs.
And then they're just going at it. And as it's spinning and he's like, oh, robot, get it right. And the robot's like, oh.
See, to me,
that's for me. I don't know. I guess maybe I just want to. I don't know.
To me, the movie is just a series of more and more incredible sequences that builds to like an incredibly, like emotionally resonant. Like, I don't know. I feel like all the themes in the movies are consistent all the way through. They all tie back perfectly, even going right back. The movie opens with Matthew McConaughey's character, Cooper, dreaming of the crash, the first track of the first song on the album. And he's dreaming of a crash. And this guy is, without a doubt, like the best pilot Earth has. Why did he crash? Well, they say later in the movie, he hit a gravitational anomaly. Literally everything in his life is steering him towards this moment.
Oh, that's him hitting a...
He hit a gravitational anomaly, which means that they were affecting his life, you know, a decade before he even comes, you know, he even is in that room dealing with the coordinates and finding his way back. But the entire thing is a circular bootstrap paradox of the laws of the universe as we know them as humanity in 2014 apply very consistently throughout this movie. And the only thing that can affect time is gravity. And that's consistent all the way through. And I really love, and I think it's underappreciated, how firmly this movie establishes its rules and sticks to them all the way through. And for all the humanity, philosophical, this is about, like, that's what humans do when they're confronted with the impossible. They hope and they dream and they think of the things that mean the most of them to keep them driving forward. And that's what we see consistently happen with so many characters in these films, and some fail and some succeed and some think they're going to be something that they aren't. And I think that all of the characters in this movie are incredibly fleshed out. We watch them kind of unfold as characters over the course of it. We find out things kind of unconventionally at different parts as they become relevant to the plot, which is, you know, I guess you could, if you were criticizing, say it's disconnected, and if you're being positive, you would say that it's just approaching it from a very realistic point of view. But I really just appreciate the way this film's put together on every level. It's not just the practical effects, it's the thought that goes into every single element of the story and the character, and it all weaves together and it all ends up fitting perfectly. Essentially, what I'm getting at here, to say it in as few words as possible, is maybe the movie's misunderstood on some levels. Maybe people's takeaway of what the movie is boils down to one or two just very small pieces of dialogue that don't work for them, that derails what is one of the most magnificent experiences I've ever had. I saw this movie first in the cinema and then in IMAX and then again and again and again at home, and I really thought that this movie was saying something that, using science fiction and weaving it with this desperate kind of hope that humanity is constantly striving towards, and that all being tied up to, the film comes across sometimes as almost propagandistic, and it's like adoration and love of NASA. And of the institution of NASA. And it's really interesting. You could read this movie as a you know, modern day propaganda piece by NASA, and I think partly this movie was created as just that. I know The Martian for sure was, but I know that NASA got very involved in the film community, Hollywood, and said to them, we want to reinvigorate the populations, you know, that part of them that has that quest for
We're
something
explorers,
more.
not caretakers.
Absolutely. and somehow from the 1960s to the modern day, the American public and maybe the global public have kind of lost sight of that goal. There's not as much, and now we're seeing private companies fill that void.
Really, right.
Elon Musk and SpaceX, he's developing all these new rockets that land themselves, and I think maybe this movie in the long term will be viewed as kind of antiquated, because what it did was it doubled down in the vision that the American government would continue funding NASA, but the reality is the corporations are going to take us into space, not the government.
secretly having a secret NASA.
Yeah, well,
this is the secretest place in the world, Matthew McConaughey. How'd you find us?
Because the public's perception of them has been turned. That's another thing I really love about this movie.
Same.
Is that the way they use propaganda, and how the propaganda within the universe of the film is almost sympathetic in a way. We find out that Matthew McConaughey's children are achieving, different grades at school. The boy's pretty successful, but they want to steer him towards being a farmer. We find out that the textbooks have been rewritten to say the moon landing was faked.
Yeah,
which he protests, being a former NASA astronaut, knows it's not true. But you don't walk away from that situation going, those teachers are cunts for teaching the wrong thing. You walk away going, no, there's no food left in this world. They have to teach this. If they don't propagandize the children and make them farmers, everyone's going to die. And that's exactly what's... Matthew McConaughey is a pilot and an adventurer and a free spirit and not a farmer at all. He's constantly... We're introduced to the character, and one of the first things he does on a world with the food slowly dying is drive through a cornfield chasing a drone he has no idea about. If that doesn't sum up a character in... it's show don't tell. I love it. I think it just right there, and then we're finding out about the world, about what's going on, about the logistics of it all, and it's like, yeah, that man just drove his truck through a cornfield. How much more do you want to say? He doesn't want to farm.
Yeah. That's really funny because I just remember watching that, and I was like, that's the start when I'm in. Because at first I'm like, I'm waiting for something to make me go, oh yeah, I'm in. This fucking Christopher Nolan, I feel like he's always gets me in, like, instantaneously. He's so good. And it's like 5 minutes in. But like, as soon as he's driving through, the music's swelling, all this, man, and I just remember being like, oh, this is so, like, just look how good this is shot. And then I remember thinking, like, he's fucking psycho. He wants the earth to burn. He's destroying all the crops. What's he doing? But it didn't even occur to me that it's a perfect character. It's show don't tell. It's an amazing introduction. Yeah. It's really, really great. And just in terms of, like, I mean, it doesn't make it better. No, it makes it much better. But it's not the only thing that's good. But I don't know, every single scene, I felt like it kept reinforcing how impressive it is. He's going through that cornfield. First takes, picking another part of the cornfield. Really trucks doing it. There's really a fucking thing. It just looks so good. Like, just in terms of, like, just not going to mention it for very long, but I also watched the first episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian yesterday. I watched that, then Interstellar. The Mandalorian, I mean, I think I'd probably enjoy that more just because Star Wars, and I don't want to say it, but it doesn't monster. It was very good. It's very, very good. But it looked incredible. It didn't look real. Not really. It looked incredible, but it doesn't have to look real as Star Wars. It's a bad example. But I don't know, Interstellar looks real. Like, if you told me they flew into a black hole and that's what happened, I'd be like, of course. I saw him fly into a black hole. And then he shot out, and then he was in the fucking spacesuit, and he was all like, oh, fuck! And I'm just like, oh, shit, no. That's actually so much better than I remember. And he's just falling. And then you see the bookcases, but you can't see them.
Like a tesseract.
And then I'm just like, oh, just tumbling. No. Yeah.
I don't know why everyone doesn't love that. Let's jump to the end for a second. Because
Magic bookcase of science.
Yeah, what that visual to me, the idea that all that can be affected through time is gravity, and now he gets plunged into the middle of what he immediately recognizes as his daughter's room.
And he's in the bookcase.
And he starts communicating, and
I think because they picked something, because watching it this time, I was overwhelmed by how much I enjoyed this visual, but still found it like, to me, you know what it is? He's screaming through the bookcase, "Don't leave, man! Make him stay! Make him stay!" And I'm just sitting there being like, I don't hate any of this, but I'm not crying. I'm not even very emotionally attached to this moment. It's all, I don't know, man, because I really hated it back in the day. Like, I didn't watch this film again. I've seen Inception probably 50 times. I've seen all these movies a lot, and I think there's a weird disconnect. I mean, there's the love is quantifiable and love conquers more than science, and he's like, love connects me, I'm finding a... But it's also like they've just picked a thing, like these beings who are presumably just humans, them in the future or whatever.
That's what they theorize.
They theorize. I really love that there's not like either you're alien boy being like, ooh, or humans being like, we're humans but smarter.
The movie essentially confirms it because the central goal, falling beyond the event horizon of the black hole, there's information available that can't get out of it, but that it would be incredibly valuable to discovering essentially the secret of gravity. Unlocking the secret of gravity. Plan A.
Sends that, right?
That's what Professor Brand, Michael Caine is working on. Plan A is I crack the code to gravity and I can propel us all off this earth safely. And plan B is we're fucked.
Yeah.
And I'm going to jettison, 5,000 humans to a livable world.
Tubes.
Exactly. They're fertilized eggs. They conceivably have some technology to grow them. And then there's people.
Yeah, or it's because they have someone already there, right? They can grow another and then there's two. And is that, I don't...
I would just assume it's the future. So there's science fiction technology, they're going to grow people.
Yeah.
That's
they
not
said it in a way where
the-
I went, that works.
It's not outside the realm of possibility.
For sure, yeah.
And all of the technology in the film is completely utilitarian, practical, and none of it is like over-designed or sci-fi or... You know what I mean? Like everything looks like
what you're talking about is how Tony Stark's like, I've just been toying with the internet. Boom! And he's like, there's a lot of blue shit going everywhere.
opposite of that. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels, this, I'm going to say it about 1,000 times, but it feels so real.
Yeah.
It feels so real. I mean, you just showed me some of the IMAX stuff and I was like, it looks really real now.
So for anyone who hasn't seen Interstellar in a while, the Blu-ray, if you watch it, the aspect ratio will change. It'll go from the 2:35 to 1 CinemaScope 35mm to almost like it will fill the whole frame, 16 by 9. But the IMAX frame is almost square, so I'm still not getting all the picture.
How big would your TV have to be to fit it all?
I guess it would just have to be almost a square.
So it's not even that it would need to be bigger, just the shape of it would actually need to be different?
Yeah.
Right, okay, yeah.
So 16 by 9 is the standard format for most things, and then movies are slightly wider. But IMAX is almost square. Somewhere between 4:3 and square, I think.
Yeah, right, okay.
But it looks exceptional. It looked really great on Blu-ray. You can even tell the difference in the quality of the footage between the 35mm and the IMAX.
Yeah.
All the IMAX sequences are magnificent. I like the mix of aspect ratios. I know some people said they found it distracting, having it shift big and small.
The biggest for me is that, like, I remember in The Dark Knight Rises, there's like one moment, and one moment for me where it's just like Bane's like, I'm Bane and I'm outside of prison and speech, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's sitting on a couch and just keeps going boom, 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 like shot to shot for like a minute. And I remember just being like, and I think I literally just from then when it happens and I notice, I'm like, no.
I feel like Dark Knight Rises might be the messiest
version of that.
Because Dark Knight had less IMAX sequences.
When you told me it had, I was like, I don't remember.
But they're clean. They're more cleanly integrated. In that there's less of them, so it's only a select few shots, but it's like the big shots. Whereas Dark Knight Rises almost felt like that the movie was worked out a little more in the edit, and that there's no way they designed it to intercut from IMAX to 35mm footage. That's a decision that was made
later
in the editing room.
And they decided it's okay, we have to because you saying that, I'm immediately like, that makes so much sense. Yeah, I'm almost more forgiving just because things happen like that. But I don't know, when you explained...
If it's distracting, and that's a valid criticism.
When you explained how in The Mandalorian first episode season 2, it expands for the first time when the creature comes out. I mean, I was like on board. I was like, this is a good episode, but maybe I'm looking for something a bit more. Oh, fuck me! Whoa! And so I didn't realize, and only when it ended, and it went, I went, oh,
it was big.
Oh, that's right, it was big!
Yeah.
I didn't notice because I was just so many teeth on screen. Oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about that. I will forget about Interstellar.
We're going to do a Mandalorian season 2 episode for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But Magic Bookcase of Science, why doesn't it work? Why does it? I think one of the things is in terms of being, it's just, I don't know, the thing I realized when I was rewatching this is this ending reminds me of, say, like, I don't know, one thing that comes to mind is like Doctor Who season 12 finale is a big swing. And for me, it's a 0 out of 10 miss. It misses everything. But it's such a swing.
Yeah.
If it had hit them all,
Ooh.
it'd be the best episode of TV. You know what I mean? Like, it's so I think Interstellar for me is like, it's that swing, and for you, it's hit it out the park. And for me, it missed it and got out. I don't know. I don't know baseball. What to do with baseball?
I think that it's because I know that when a human being looks into something incomprehensible, they do their best to try and articulate it. But what they say doesn't necessarily have to make sense. But it
makes sense to them, maybe.
Exactly, and what it's doing in that moment is informing the character. What is the most important thing to him in that moment? It's the same thing with the end of Inception. He spins the top, he walks off. We then, the audience, we're looking at the top. We're not paying attention to what's out of focus in the background, which is he's gone back to his kids and he doesn't give a shit about the top. I feel like more people got that, and maybe I don't know how you could make sense of falling into a gravitational tesseract in a black hole that is of your daughter's room and not come away with the idea that love transcends all. And that, I mean, you literally have science and reality have literally bent so that you can inform your daughter, the person you left. It's all based on this relationship between these two characters. They save the earth, they save humanity together through their bond, through their love. And it's just humans saying words, making sense out of nonsense. And the reality of the situation is humanity solved the equation of gravity, and we can now manipulate gravity in any way we want,
we're in a fifth dimension, and they've made it a bookcase thing so that he can deal with it.
And we see
that's what they say.
And he
the
sees
robots
humanity,
like they did this to make you understand it.
And he sees humanity at the midpoint where we've got a gigantic gravitational station with like fields, and
we've got the Inception world.
Yeah, like
he wakes up in Inception.
So they're not at the point where they're fifth dimensional beings yet, but we've dominated gravity. You know?
Okay, yeah. So
like we did it.
I saw that all like when it was like, it's like Elysium. Also, the bit in Inception where the buildings go whoa.
Yeah.
That my mind. I don't know. I don't know if that's science. I know what gravity is. I'm not gonna say I don't know what gravity is.
Gravity is mass and time. And
but see, gravity to me is like when they say gravity is doing the thing. A thing that really doesn't work for me. Well, no, I have one main thing that doesn't work for me. I'll get to that. But the other thing, before I forget, is he goes like he's like, you know, fiddling with the bookcase or whatever. I don't know, like the strings on the bookcase.
It's a 3-dimensional beings. It's a 5th-dimensional beings construction
of a thing to make us feel like we're controlling it in a way that makes sense to our brains.
Well,
right?
it's like designing a little playpen for your hamster.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're not gonna. You're going to simplify things, and you're going to have mazes that run around, and maybe a little thing they have to solve to get the cheese, or you know what I mean? Like a little, like that's what it is because they're looking into it and designing a gravitational tesseract. Going, all right, we've solved gravity. We've created a black hole. He's going to fall into it because if he never fell into it, he would never affect gravity to bring himself to the point where he would affect gravity.
Yeah.
So the bootstrap paradox has to happen. For them to, he sent the data to humanity that solved the equation. Mm-hmm. So he had to fall into it to send the data for them to create it, for him to fall into it, to send the data around and around and around.
Yeah.
And that's why every kind of event in his life, including the crash that plagues his nightmares, was affected by conceivably, you know, a 5th-dimensional human gravitational wielding being, which is just, yeah.
So for me, the gravity works when he's like, he makes the dust, and then the dust like lines up for her the first time.
It's just more gravity falls here.
Yeah, no. But so that makes sense to me. I'm like, I understand that. He like, gravity, whatever. But it's like, the thing that does make sense to me though is like, it feels like he's like, hitting the bookshelf, and the books fall off, because it's gravity or whatever. But for me, all of that makes sense because he's behind an actual bookcase, like actually interacting with things, be it gravity or the book or whatever. But I guess
You
the
watch
book
him
via
kind of-
gravity. But
You watch him kind of figure out how to use it
yeah, no,
in those beginning moments, and he's just banging shit and freaking out, and like,
and then
"Whoa!"
at one point he
And-
realizes he's like, oh,
and then he's like,
hack. Yeah. No, that's all fine. It's the visual that, you know. For me though, it's like he gives her like the science to unlock future science or whatever.
yes,
To be an ultra fifth dimensional being or get there or whatever. She's moving the clock hand. And then when she leaves, the clock hand's still doing it. But I was like, but he's behind a bookcase. He's no longer able to like affect gravity. Or is he? Because it seemed like they picked one moment in time.
he can affect.
And it just kind of
he can affect
confused me. Do you know what I
the
mean?
gravity in that room, and he can manipulate things. He can
So
manipulate the hand of the
she
clock.
leaves the watch right and it's still doing it though.
Of course,
I guess that just confused me. I was like, how is he doing that? How is he?
you watch him.
No, he does it at first, but then when it leaves there where he can affect it, because it's sitting like to
So
me.
she takes it, translates the Morse code that he's implemented through the
And
gravitational
then that's
thing, and then that's the equation. She solves it.
I mean, this is literally the nitpick that is wrong. I mean, it's just the thing that came on. But to me, it felt like if that watch hadn't been in the bookcase, like on the bookcase, he couldn't have touched it.
He would have just
could have.
done a different thing.
Right. Okay.
It was resonant because it was the watch she threw away and smashed and.
No. Like I get that. Yeah, because he's like, our watches will be the same. They might be different when I come back, and I'll be the same age as you. That's probably my favorite bit, where he's like. He says early on, he's like, I could be the same age as you. And he's trying to have fun. And she's like, you don't know when the fuck you're coming back
Yeah.
on. And he goes, oh, I made a mistake saying that. And I go, I like this. Because I know that she's going to get super old. Because I've seen this movie before. But I really liked all that. But I don't know, something about that watch really didn't work for me. And I guess maybe there's the bit right after. Oh, wait, so I'll get to the bit when the movie just stops working more for a bit. And it ends with her showing the watch to her brother. Matt Damon is like obviously sus. Like I just remember the movie the first time, and I know now that he's
Matt Damon.
sorry Matt Damon when they find him on Snow Planet. I just remember when he rocked up the first time, being like, oh, I don't trust him. Nothing's happened yet. Like we need a villain. Like my brain just kind of worked that way where I went, I feel like he'll be the villain. I'll be surprised if he's not. And this time, just knowing it happened, but something I didn't remember that really didn't work for me, like more than the bookcase being magic science, because that was all like I was surprised by how good this looks as well. And then I looked online and there was a lot of it was real, which is like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? It looks so good. And I think every year we go past a movie, I go back and I'm like, wow, like some movies really stand out and you realize that's going to look like that forever.
Interstellar's
going to look better.
20 years.
It's going to look better in 20 years because we'll have more hobbits. So the Lord of the Rings is the Interstellars, your Inceptions, they're going to stand out.
Yeah.
And that kind of excites me. Oh fuck, I've just forgotten what I was trying to say.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon's whole plot and the whole thing is like, how do I describe it? It's like a fuse, and Matt Damon wakes up and it's being lit, and something's gonna happen. And it's I'm building to it. Oh no! Cut all tension and cut to some people on a farm. And every time it cuts to them, I'm like, all right, pretend you care. They're his family or something. Pretend like we were given a scene where I should feel anything. Because that brother burning the field, and then there's the guy from the 70s show. I was in my brain, I was watching, I'm like, is he Venom anymore? Or is Tom Hardy now Venom?
Yeah.
Is he reverted back to that 70s show guy? Because I feel like I was watching, I was like, I don't know how I feel about him anymore. But, I don't know, all of that stuff to me just felt like, don't put this in as a chunk, then do the space chunk. But don't intersect it either. That just, for me, felt like, there's bits where he's just like, we don't have time, he's coming, the fires, and just kept cutting from that to the space stuff. And everything in space is just so much more exciting. It looked better to me, and it gave me this odd sense of like, I didn't feel as trapped in space. I didn't feel as trapped on this island, on the snow planet. I don't know, did you find the cutting of that? That was my main issue in the movie.
No,
that sequence, that cutting made me go, that's what Christopher Nolan does. He intersects all the plots at once, and it felt like an Inception where he's like, we're on a snow planet, now the bus is falling, now this. And for me, every second of that builds and works. And this time, I was watching it, and it would be building, and then it would cut, and it'd be building this other scene, and I just was like, just a real disconnect of like, oh, I just really don't care. And then it culminates with her being like, brother, he saved us. He's going to save us. The watch. And his reaction isn't like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what is happening right now? He just hugs her.
I feel like it is kind of like that. She hugs him, and he's like...
So I guess I just wanted more.
Just an angry drunk.
Yeah, okay. I just feel like I wanted more from his character, where I just feel like the one scene we're given is that time dilation scene on the computers. But to me, that's really more his scene of losing. Mm-hmm. And he gets flashes of their lives, but it's nothing. And so to me, I don't feel like I've gotten a bit of their lives in that bit. And I don't know how you do that. Watching it, I wasn't like, oh, you know what? This is what I would have done. Often I feel like a big issue, I always have like a fix that would work for me. I don't really know. For me, I was just like, I kind of feel like I just wanted it to stay in space. But then your last 15 minutes is just not the same movie at all. Because if you don't intersect them, then you're not able to come to the point where she's realizing it and he's doing it and it builds. I also don't think that her looking at a booklet and it's saying stay, she just goes, the ghost is my dad. That, like, there's just no way she'd come to that to me. Like, that just seems like, that's my biggest issue. That she comes to that conclusion really, to me, like, just because the movie's ending and she has to come to that conclusion. Nothing that he does.
So you needed an aha moment.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't construct the movie so we wouldn't need that at all. That would be but that's a fundamental change, and that's just because everything else for me is working so well. Like, I love the robot that doesn't make sense, but then apparently it's all practical. So I'm like, I guess it makes sense.
To me, hearing you say that, I just am coming at it again from the complete opposite angle, where I'm like, how could this lady who has studied this stuff her entire life only come to that conclusion at that moment? Like,
that's another issue. That's the same issue as me, though. It's like, she's coming to that conclusion. Why is it just like now when the scene is like, it's just because the climax of the film's happening?
So yes, you could argue, why didn't she figure it out earlier? She's studying all of this with Professor Brand. She's kind of grown up with him as a mentor figure and
the father figure,
taken on his life's work and is running with it. But also, she just, ultimately what we're seeing is, I mean, it doesn't really matter. And hearing you say that it feels jumbled and that you're cutting from sequences you do care about to ones you don't care about, and then from my perspective, I just felt none of that at all. Because I'm invested in everything going on, and for me it's just like the characters split off at a point and we follow them kind of relatively as they're moving along, so that at the end it comes back together for the most part at the same time, and then we get those things happening. But for her dad left Earth, flew into a gravitational anomaly, a wormhole, and disappeared. And she never saw him again. And then during all of this stressful time, she can't figure anything out, everything is potentially a lie, comes back to her childhood home, to the room that she's been avoiding for so long, the room she's been avoiding because of how she feels about her father abandoning her, and then comes back, finally looks at the notes as she took as a girl again. And that's the moment it all comes together for her. And she goes, of course, my father who flew into a wormhole is affecting things is affecting the gravitational field of this room and can communicate me. Let's figure out how he's communicated. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe because I've not just heard this from you, I've seen many comments on the internet and other friends who've seen it that felt a big disconnect from the movie, didn't quite add up to them. Yeah. I think reading it more is like, they really make a point of saying that she's avoided it, that she's avoided her stuff, that she's avoided going to that room. This is a bad memory. She's holding all of this resentment towards her father, who was fed a lie and left to try and save her. And then they finally get to come back at this. She communicates through him, gets the message across, and maybe in the movie, that aha moment being something a little more, because all you got to do is go back to the start of the script, put a little bit more of a direct tie-in, so that moment works perfectly for people, and then maybe you can win some more over.
It's
because I think the fundamentals are all there.
This is, and I kind of had part of my part of my mind was like, I bet you this is going to happen, and I think it's going to happen when I watch Arrival, where because I think this is the film when Arrival's the same, where you have such a strong take, and I feel like I'm just so negative, and every time you talk about it, I'm like, I would have loved to watch that movie you saw, but I just didn't. I don't know what it is about it, but you saying all that, I'm like, you know what? I remember the line where she's like, I don't know, I've been back or whatever, and there's a bit where he's like, what are we doing here? Or maybe he doesn't say that, but all the cars are driving the other way and they're going back home, and she's like, I just have a feeling. And I remember being like, as I was watching this, I'm like, something about that line. There's something about how serious and intense and real the film feels. That when they I won't say every episode for the rest of the time, but we've been watching a lot of Doctor Who, and I've still been watching a lot of Doctor Who, and it's utter nonsense all the time. But there's a main character that's just the most nonsense, always spouting nonsense, and there's a big rhino who's like, I'm a cop, and I'm like, it's so stupid that I can never, when they go really stupid, it has to just go, like, it almost always works for me. Whereas this, to me, is like way less nonsense than a lot of Doctor Who that works for me. And I was trying to figure out, why isn't this just not working for me? And I think I was like, there's just not a man. Like, Matthew McConaughey is so serious, crying all the time. He's like, don't leave me, daughter. But he's leaving his daughter. And it's just so emotionally raw and rich and human. And there's no character running about with a fez, spouting timey-wimey nonsense at any point before things get a bit crazy, where I'm able to go, I don't know, I can accept these kind of huge themes and these big just ideas. Like, even just him coming back out of the wormhole at the end or whatever, and he's just floating, and then we see these two dots in the distance. It's like, well, he came out at the perfect place. Sure, who cares?
Not the perfect place. He came back through the wormhole. He slingshotted around the black hole, which cost him 51 years of time, went into the event horizon of the black hole. He burnt the rest of his fuel out so that she could get away, fell into the black hole.
And they're just there because it's 50 years later.
Well, no, he that's just the time that it is now, because it took 51 years for them
him to do that.
For both of them. So for Brand and Hathaway and Cooper, slingshotting around the black hole so that she could get to that planet cost them both 51 years. He went into the black hole, she continued onto the planet. Then he got spat out back through the wormhole point, which was constructed by future humanity who also built the Tesseract.
They put that there
in the black hole. Yeah. So they put him back there, and then he's picked up by the orbiting station of Saturn, and then the daughter takes a few weeks for her to come and visit. Yeah. And she's basically on her deathbed to that point in time, and I don't know, I think it's I think if it was as sappy and silly and goofy as everyone claims it to be, I feel like that last scene, it wouldn't be an old woman on a bed. It would, they would have got Jessica Chastain, and they would have come back in that moment. There would be more of a, I don't know,
a very melancholy, sad ending.
It took him
all the family takes it. Sorry, that one shot, all the family takes over, and she disappears from his frame as her new family just kind of swarm over her. I was like, pretty unpleasantly sad. Why is the movie ending like this? And then it's like, he's gonna find Anne Hathaway. I'm like, all right, there's a little bit of hope there, but also will he? Because he's just, or is she sad and alone forever now? He's
overshot his time by so much, and then arrived at this point, and his daughter is a great grandmother, and she's like, you don't want to watch your kid die.
Get out of here.
Go. That's all you've got left now.
Yeah.
Go steal a ship. Also, I want that movie. What? Matthew McConaughey and Tars flying around.
The Interstellar 2.
I can't tell you how excited I get every time I watch the end of this movie. When that happens, it's like Luke and R2 in the X-Men. I just want that. I want more adventures with them. It's just such an exciting prospect because I've had such a good time in this universe, and I don't know. I think maybe I appreciate the thought that's been put into it, and maybe I have a blind spot for the emotional parts that are lacking, that so many people seem to find a point of disconnection with, where it doesn't work for them. but the characters just feel so consistent to me, and like people, I hear so much complaining about Casey Affleck and the brother character, but this is his dad's abandoned him, his first child died, his wife and kid are almost certainly going to die, they're coughing,
Yeah, they got
all,
the cough sickness.
yeah, like this he's turned to alcohol and he has nothing left, and the corn's slowly dying, everything's fucked. Why wouldn't he be a horrible person? Like, world is degrading around him, and this is the reality of, if anything, it's a little soft. Like,
well, I think that's kind of my issue. Is that I don't think his character is like too sad. It's like it should be. It's like, no, I just don't think he's developed enough for me to understand. Like, just everything at the end feels so like unnecessarily dramatic. Like the fire's burning. They've got to put it. Just all this stuff. Like none of this
distraction.
None of this matters. Like all of that just feels like I just.
But it literally matters more than everything else, because if she doesn't figure it out in that moment, they never solve the gravity equation. They never get off Earth.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. I guess it just, for me, it feels like a unnecessary kind of... But I don't know what I want. Like, I don't... It's just dramatic stuff happening, to build it all up. But to me, it just feels like when he's, like, screaming, he's like, he's coming back! We don't have much time! I'm like... I just don't feel like there's, like, that ticking clock element. Whereas, like, say, when they get to the water planet, even though I said it didn't necessarily work, it really did. In terms of, like, when they're on that water planet, it's like... I guess that's my only issue with the water planet. It's just like, because I know how horrible it is, as soon as they land, I'm like, you should just leave. Like, this is not a planet. Like, we're not living here. Get out of here. This is Waterworld. Get out of here. And so it's almost just that,
you got three choices and
no, exactly.
One little tidbit. There's a thing that I really hate that always happens in movies, and it's like, this guy's the best at this thing. This guy's the best driver. This guy's the best pilot. This guy's the best whatever.
Where they've got one skill, they do it a little bit at the start to impress the guy, then right at the end.
But
look at
so many movies just say it and don't ever do it. And this movie does it. Matthew McConaughey is the best fucking pilot in the galaxy. Watching his maneuver to the water planet, watching him be like, no, we're gonna go down hot, and then we're gonna just turn on right at the last second. We need to conserve fuel. Like, he's thinking about everything logistically, the way it plays out in the scene. Like, this guy is the best pilot. This guy is the reason they made it. And it's interesting because they were going to go with it. Before he stumbled across the base, Michael Caine said we were going to go with people who aren't pilots, who don't know how to fly these things. And they all would have died. Yeah. If without this thing, without him there, knowing just kind of a step ahead of everything and being the best pilot and being able to dock the ship and being able to maneuver, and everything he does at every moment, it kind of fits with the very small amount that I know about astronauts and aeronautics and all of these big things that I'll never figure out in my lifetime. Yeah. All that I know, it seems to fit, and they really, really sell me on not just that saying this guy's the best pilot, but in every single scenario where he has to fly, he's demonstrating it, and he is the smartest person in the room, and he's a step ahead, and he's thinking about everything, and I don't know, I really like this character. I really think that he just has the spirit of an adventurer at his core, and I really like that he's been suppressed and he's been held back, and there's this want. And then he's got kids and they're holding him back too. And there's this the emotion really hits me. I feel this man being torn. Like the sequence of the shuttle taking off to go to the Endeavour in orbit.
The start.
But it's first leaves, yeah. But more importantly, that it's intercut with him leaving his daughter, because him leaving Earth is him leaving his kids. That's what's important to him. So it's like footage of them arguing and then him leaving, intercut with the ship taking off, and I don't know, Christopher Nolan said when he was a child, he went with his father to see 2001, and that he walked out and he didn't quite understand it, but that it was a movie that had to be felt and not seen. You had to feel it. And I really feel this movie. I think that he was setting out to replicate something about 2001, something about it's even more disconnected from kind of narrative logic as we know it in movies. 2001. Like this is
2001.
This is much more a movie than that is a movie.
100%, yeah.
But they're operating under the same premise, and it's just so interesting that there is so much of a disconnect for people where they're not getting the I feel it, and they're only getting the I appreciate it. I like looking at it, but they're not feeling it, and I don't know. It kind of makes me sad that I do feel it, and I did feel it, and I feel it every time again and again, and I pick up new things, and then every time I look out into the world, someone else who I think like they're going to be on the same page, like you, but no one is. And
we're all hating that.
Every movie critic on the internet is saying the same thing, and I don't know what it is that I'm seeing that other people aren't, and I wish that I was more easily able to articulate it. But the characters feel consistent. The everyone's intention is clear to me. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's torn. I mean, this is a horribly depressing situation in which these characters would be depressed, and the weight of the world is on all these people's shoulders, and you feel it.
It's the worst world. Just corn. If you told me I had to eat corn for 3 days, I'd be like, fuck you. No.
Isn't it interesting, the cinematic cornfield thing? I mean,
what do you mean?
Two of my favourite movies that people hate that I love, Signs and Interstellar.
I love it. There's a corn conspiracy is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
maybe I just like corn.
Oh guys, he's onto us. He's onto that corn conspiracy.
But being serious for a moment, there is something about the aesthetic of a cornfield I think I really like that just adds some, I don't know, it's a I think easy, practical way that you can grow something real and tangible that you can feel in the universe that I think is kind of easy to do but doesn't look like it is. So just immediately I'm like in the world, I'm like on this farm, I'm here.
In Signs, when the signs are made in the corn, to me that's like the most impressive stunt you could do. But if someone's like, it took me 15 minutes.
To me,
it's in terms of just, it wouldn't take 15 minutes, but the effort of like for instance driving through the cornfields, and once you've articulated it so perfectly earlier about like what that actually means for his character. Because I was going to say some stupid thing about how he just wants to end the world secretly because he's just running through the only resource they have.
That's what I didn't spirit.
Yeah. It's so genius. Like actually thinking about that now, I'm like, that's a perfect character introduction. Like up there with like any character introduction.
Yeah.
Like Jack Sparrow, for different reasons obviously, but it's a really powerful one. One thing though, you were talking about how good Matthew McConaughey is as a pilot. You know what else I think does a really great job at showing how good someone is at something? Make them do it. I think this is it's like a juggling trick. A juggler will be like, oh no, and intentionally fuck up doing like 4 balls. So then when they suddenly just whip out 7, you're like, what the fuck? How are they doing this? And it's like a expectation, something. Yeah, someone has the words. Google it or whatever.
I'm with you.
Get out of here. Stop listening to me. No, but there's this amazing bit when not Matthew McConaughey, the other famous guy, Matt Damon, he steals the spaceship and he goes to dock the fucking ship or whatever, and there's a bit where they're just like, and they're trying to click on the knot, and there's the siren going, and Matt Damon's just like, I don't care, I'll figure it out. I'm like, you fucking just like, what are you doing? It's like when you fuck up a park, you don't just go, that's good enough. You rearrange a bit and you get the park right, and he didn't, and for me that was like, Matthew McConaughey wasn't fucking this shit up, and he wouldn't fuck this shit up. And what's so great is that Matthew McConaughey does it simply, then he fucks it up and it's simple, and then he's like, oh don't worry, just when he dies and it's just done, and then Matthew McConaughey's like, I'll do it while it's spinning, and it's like, oh, but you're nervous, but it's like, that's kind of like the hero moment where I'm nervous but I'm also excited because I know he's got this, because
I couldn't breathe in the cinema. I was like holding my breath until it docked.
It's some of the most cinematic, epic kind of stuff, but it's got this bizarre kind of simplicity to it.
Yeah.
Like there's a moment where it just goes, and I'm just like looking at it being like, hey, I was just like looking at it like, there's a weird phallic sexual aspect to this, or it's just like this weird slow sexual dance, you know? But it's very simple, like get a stick into the thing and lock it in. It's not like Endgame where there's like 17,000 people fighting and someone's throwing a giant over a thing and there's spear, nonsense happening. It was just like they're spinning, they lock up their spinning and then they connect. But it's spectacular. Like that's my favorite part by far because it's got such a dramatic turn of events so quickly. And I'm always a sucker for someone like halfway through saying like, "Oh, I'm the greatest," and he just dies. And I'm like, I laughed out loud so much because I'm not a big Matt Damon fan, so him dying is funny to me.
The way you visualised that was exactly like it happened in the movie.
He just goes, woo! Yeah, no, I'm just going to say, I mean, we're not done, but I just want to say, I'm not negative. It's just that if something that you, like, if the first 15 minutes like, really didn't work for me, and I was like, I was like, oh, Matthew Caine, no, what's his name? Matthew Caine, what's his name?
Michael Caine?
Oh, was he? So I'm going to mock him, I may as well get his name right. But if I started, I was like, oh, Michael Caine, I don't like that actor. He just, something about it, I was like, oh, I don't like corn and farms, so I don't like the start. The end worked everything for me. I wouldn't even remember the start. I'd rewatch it being like, oh, just get the start. I was like, but things happening at the end that don't work for me, it culminates and then suddenly you feel a bit deflated when it ends and I don't feel as triumphant, I guess, which I think might be the biggest issue with people just in general, because I think I was on that side. Now I'm in like an awkward bit where I kind of agree with them and I agree with you, but I don't really see it that way, unfortunately. But I think just having that bookcase stuff, I don't know, like I don't know if what people would have been more accepting of in that moment, or if people like me kind of didn't want to have it wrap up in a way where he makes it back. Like, I don't know, maybe, it's hard to say, because watching it again, there's a bit where he shoots off into the black hole, and my mind just went, alright, if we were just to not have it get all crazy, what would happen now? It would be incredibly sad, and a really oddly, you can't just have him disappear. And then the daughter's all just crying. Do you know what I mean? Like there's not really a way to kind of do the film they want to do without kind of having this looped kind of, I don't know why I love it, man. We've watched so much stuff recently, but it kind of reminded me of Dark Season 3, where I felt like it was very, very close to working for me, and one or two things really hit me. Sorry. How long were you doing that for?
So long.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I suddenly felt like, I was like, have you been doing a thing for ages? But I was just trying to articulate better. I was getting stuck in what I was saying.
I derail your point so many times and I'm so frustrated. I've been editing so much recently that it's a nightmare for me if you don't finish your point.
Yeah.
And then I have to edit it together.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, please, Jax, finish. And I'm if you just see me put my hand up, just wrap that thought up.
Yeah. And then
and leave a gap just so it's easy to edit.
Okay, sorry. So I have a question. You love this film. Watched it a bunch of times. Is there any aspect for it that you feel doesn't work, or generally you're pretty happy with it? As a,
It's a good question.
And wait, as a thing, because we've kind of talked about it, and I feel like it would come up with anything maybe I say. Not things that you're disappointed that other people don't like about it. Like, I know you were saying before, you're like, why don't people, but like, as just when you watch it, outside of like me being like, bookcase magic, and you're like, oh, maybe if it worked for everyone, and maybe there's a twist, they're like, no, just for you. Anything that doesn't work. Or generally speaking, yay.
Just trying to think. I think Christopher Nolan's aesthetic really fits my sensibilities in a way that very few other filmmakers are able to maintain my suspension of disbelief for as long a period of time. And we really get into the realm of the subjective, which is all this podcast, or any podcast is for that
or
matter.
Anything. Everything's subjective.
So it's almost not even worth ever saying anything is subjective because you're not even saying anything.
Yeah.
But anyway,
just subjective point of view.
His sensibilities fit the way my mind works, the way he sees things, the way he approaches character, the way he approaches plot, the way that his visual style, his music, all of his sensibilities just fit so much with what I want to get out of a cinematic experience. And when I think of cinema, I think like some of the biggest, boldest moments I can remember have come from his films. And I think that for a lot of people maybe, and I'm not even really answering your question here because I don't know.
You don't have to. Say whatever you want.
I don't know if there's anything that really doesn't work for me. And sometimes maybe, I guess the closest things come to not working is the Dr. Mann, Matt Damon stuff. But even all of that seems to fit with just what they're doing in that moment of the film, which is kind of all hope is lost. And
it works for me a lot more this time. For some reason, last time I was just like, I think it was just the thing of like, you know when like you think trailers will just ruin everything, and then a movie will twist and surprise you, and sometimes you're just like, maybe I wish I'd known Matt Damon had been there. It's just kind of, I was like, Matt Damon just rocked up, and I remember just being like, But this time I was like, I don't know. Everything about it worked.
He's just another actor in the movie. I think people got so distracted by him. Because
it's like
he's not an actor that rocks up 2/3 of the way through.
Yeah. And it gives it just a weird vibe where you're something like, whoa, like huge A-list Matt Damon, they kept a secret.
I have to pay attention now. That it wakes you up.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing because I think that
they almost should have just cast nobody.
Just nobody. And I think for me, if it had, I actually, I can't possibly say because I've always just had the memory of Matt Damon rocks up and he's evil and who cares? It's too late in the movie to emote. But for me, it really had a different element. It was a different element. It wasn't like, oh, the villains appeared halfway too late in the movie. It was just like, they've got here. He's going to be one or two things. And what really got me this time is Matt Damon wakes up and he sees a human and immediately just breaks down like a little baby. There's no sexy Matt Damon crying. He's just crying in his shoulder and the other guy's like, awkward.
And he says something
super real.
He says something right after, like you don't know what it's like, and but thinking that you'll never see another face again, something like that.
And he's not really like happy then. He's very melancholy and a bit off still. And he's saying it, and I feel like he's processing, and he's probably not even aware that he's going to be the villain of the story in 20 minutes. And I don't know. That's how I read it this time, where I felt
he's not the villain of his story.
No,
he's the hero. And he's the hero that reached the end point where he had to lay down his life for the greater good, but he couldn't deal with it because he was almost as if being elevated to this level. I mean, everyone else in the movie has reverence for it. Like, we hear Dr. Mann's name a bunch of times.
Dr. Mann's the man, yeah.
Yeah,
they
like,
say that. No,
this guy, the greatest sacrifice. And, the fact that he says, like, he just waited and went to sleep and he couldn't deal with it. And just having that button there, knowing that button's there, that is almost no men have been tested the way he has been tested. He's fucking right about that.
Yeah.
And he couldn't deal with it. And I think there's just a really... And also his distorted sense of reality now that he's living in is the people will get here. I've set a booby trap. I'm going to take the other one out, do away with them, come back, take their ship, finish the mission. I'm still the hero everyone wants. Yeah, like, he's still trying to fulfill that thing at the cost of all the people around him, but it doesn't matter, the mission matters, and I'm going to finish the mission now.
Yeah, like kill 3 to save humanity. And
it's, I don't know, it does work for me. So it's like, distracting, it's Matt Damon, but he's doing a great job. And
those things, I think, are in the cinema. Like, I can't imagine someone who's seen it like I only watched it once in the cinema, and now, which for me is like, I often, like, you don't want to know how many times I've seen Thor the Dark Lord. I don't even like it anymore. Last time I watched it, I was like, is this bad? Like everyone said, I was the biggest apologist. I was the biggest Dark Thor world apologist ever. And then there was like a 5-year gap and I rewatched it. And I was like, no, I just watched it like 6 times in like 2 weeks. Got really into it and now it's no good. Yeah.
We're in a post-Thor Ragnarok world too, which makes it very hard to...
I found the Dark World very funny at the time.
Yeah.
I really...
if the visual style lived up to what was going on in the script, I think it might have worked. Because Joss Whedon famously was helicoptered in,
Came right in. That's why
to fix the movie and put all the Loki stuff in, which is all the best stuff.
It's all the best stuff, and you know what it is as well. I'm the biggest apologist of Avengers 2, and all of Joss Whedon's work. I bet you, if I watched even Buffy, the best of Joss Whedon's work, I'd be like, this isn't really working for me at the level it was. Where when I watched Buffy, just out of year 12, I remember we had muck up day where you go all crazy for the last day, and I just went to school. I'd missed it. I'd slept in. The school was empty. My mate was in the library with the Buffy box set, and I just watched it for like 7 weeks. I was so obsessed, but I don't think I'd be into it anymore. And that's just when Avengers came out and all that stuff. And I just think my humor is like, it's just changed. I'm not into the quips the same way, you know.
There's no quips in this except from Tars.
All right, that's a good segue. I was gonna say like, why would Avengers just win? But it doesn't matter. Fuck that guy. Who cares? The robots.
I fucking love them so
They're
much.
real. It's just one side.
best
I'm saying robots like there's a bunch of them. The
There's
robot.
Caine and Tars.
Sure, but we're just following one, really. Yeah, okay. I felt like there was, for me, that
One
felt like there was-
speaks more, yeah.
Right, was there two on the ship from all those?
Caine, yeah. Caine and Tars.
Okay.
And then Kip is the dismantled
So
one.
I thought Kip was the one you're meaning, so I didn't even notice the other guy.
And then someone's like, you don't talk much, do you? He's like, Tars does the talking for both of us.
Holy shit.
He's like soft-spoken down, and all the quipping and stuff is with Tars.
Tars, yeah.
But Case is generally on the ship piloting. Like, I think he stays on the Endeavour for the most part.
Oh my
and
God.
Tars will go with them.
Yeah. No, you're right. There's the, yeah. That's
Look,
weird how little that registers. Like, you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, you're right, but
I have watched this a
barely registers.
lot too. So I might
Yeah.
not, that might be a detail that...
Tars has got a lot of personality.
Exactly.
Who's it played by? Who is that?
Oh, God.
Not a famous person then.
I think it's
Because usually it's an
little
Alan
bit
Tudyk
famous,
or
yeah.
I mean, all the Star Wars ones are like, it's this famous person, can you believe it? Or what? I always feel like they've, you know, like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there's like, it's Snape. Snape's the robot.
Oh, yeah.
Depressed robot Snape. I don't know, they always feel like they're...
Bill Irwin, I just remembered. I don't know who that is, but it's someone. He's the guy who does things.
Yeah, cool. Really, really like it. Feel like it's 3 jokes away from being too much in terms of like the humor. Like you say, there's no humor. I'm like, yeah, no, there's none. But his stuff is really good. Like, I feel like...
Robot slave army.
Yeah, right at the start.
And then the humor setting.
I really like all that stuff. I just feel like it's just there though. Like it's not a focus. The thing about the robot though to me is like, when I found out that it was a practical thing,
It's a puppet.
It doesn't make sense to me because
It's
to
a
me,
puppet.
when I watch it, I go, that's what happens with a visual effect when, like, this is a visual effect because of how it moves. Like, it looks real to me. Like, I'm not surprised that it's a puppet because it's real, but it goes... The robot has, like, this, like, it's like 4 blocks. And it does a thing. To me, I look at that, I'm loving it. I'm not like, ugh, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, that doesn't, like, work. You know, like, it... Like, to me, I'm like, what am I trying to say? It looks fucking awesome. I love that it feels practical. You find out it really is practical, like 99% of the time. But to me, when it does a thing, they're like extended time out thing. Now it's got a little claw and it's I'm like, no, what? Like, how did this robot? How did they make?
It's just another part folds out.
I know, but just as it happened, like there's a bit in the water where it's like, take it back quickly, and it's just like, and it just spit. I'm like, what the fuck? Like that?
You don't love that?
No, I love it, but,
Okay.
but no. So what I mean is, I love the robot, but like 20% of me is like, that doesn't make any sense. But then 18% of that is like, don't say that, because you actually don't know anything about anything. You're not even sure if the gravity makes sense in this movie. Because what is gravity? Just things go down or whatever, right? I hate science. No. Science is fine. I don't hate anything.
Detailed explanation.
I'm not good at remembering or knowing the science behind the thing.
Sure.
Like, we have like so many lights and cameras in this room. I don't know how they work. It doesn't make sense to me that they work and then someone's gonna click a button on a computer and then just plays. It doesn't make sense to me. You could be like, oh no, this is how don't tell me how a phone works. I don't want to know, and it's too much for me. The robot design is the same, where it's not like a Cyberman, where I'm like, I understand arms and legs. I guess I must have had a biology class that clicked in, or it's just biology where I just understand, certain things make sense to me. Like how people without thumbs can't hold things and shit. Certain things make sense, but watching that robot, it doesn't make sense to me and it doesn't seem like it works.
Really?
But I just feel like maybe I'm not versed enough in... There's another moment in this film that they said something and I went, that is so dumb. And then I went, is it though? We were just watching it. I'm so glad I remember this because I feel like you're going to have an explanation. I'm going to be like, well, there you go. This is the perfect example. And this is why it's so prevalent in my mind. There's a scene where they smash through the corn, they find the ship and it lands, and he hijacks it on his computer. And then he's just got a little laptop keypad, and he's just controlling it. Just like, and he's just flying around like he's controlling. And I'm just like, that can't be how something like that works. And then I went, maybe that is exactly how it works. Because if anyone's going to do it right, for me and my brain, it's just, I feel like Christopher Nolan's going to ask a guy and be like, well, we'll do it like that. But my brain just goes, how can you hijack this Indian satellite spaceship with your laptop and then you're just spinning it around and it's just, do you know what I mean? Like, to me, there's a disconnect with how that works. But then if you're like an internet man and you're like, well, it's just the interwebs. And I'm like, well, sure, whatever the fuck you mean, sure. It's just a bit above my pay grade, Like, my mind hits a level of, like, understanding it. And, like, I don't go, that's magic. It's magic! It's, like, not that. It's, like, I'm just, like, it doesn't process. My brain doesn't...
So what you're saying is, you're like Matthew McConaughey at the end of the film in the Tesseract, looking at something scientifically that you don't understand and attempting to rationalize it within the frame of reference.
It must be love!
Yeah. You got the drone down with love.
You're just trying to make me angry now. No, I'd rather it be science I don't understand than love.
Well, I mean, the drone thing's real simple. I suppose it's emitting some type of Wi-Fi signal. He hacked into it and remote controlled it. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Because a drone is just a computer with some mechanical components that enable it to propel off the ground. It's a propulsion system.
But I mean, honestly, if you said you hacked my phone and sent a tweet,
exactly, it's the
I'd
same
be like,
principle.
what the fuck? How?
Your phone's a computer. You hack into the computer. You.
As I said, I understand.
Yeah.
It's a thing that's possible, but my brain like stops at a level. As I was saying when I was watching The West Wing, it's like they're saying a lot of words, and I understand the mise en scene, like the yay, this is good, or this is bad, but what they're actually saying, I'm like, no, I don't.
And there's the added component of that you will never really understand The West Wing in a weird way, because to understand The West Wing, you had to be at that moment in time watching that episode of television in that week, after Aaron Sorkin had written it based on what was going on in the world geopolitically.
There's a lot of stuff where I'm
exactly.
like, I bet you this law actually passed this
For
year.
sure.
It's
known as a very current, and it was tackling things that were going on. So each
week will be like
you're watching it as a show now in 2020 through that
South Park. I had an issue trying to watch through South Park because every third episode would just be like, I wouldn't even know what they're talking about. I'd be like, what is this? Whereas I felt like, you feel that sense of like, that's someone that had a thing that happened at the time, and that joke is parodying or mocking or having fun with or whatever, a thing that's just nothing to me.
So the science developed behind the film was developed by Kip Thorne, I believe is a physicist. The robot was named after him, Kip.
Oh, right.
The one that's deconstructed that blows up. But he would...
Take that, science man. You're the shitty robot that gets ripped apart. We rip his organs out and put it in a better robot. That robot's Christopher Nolan or something. No, that's not what he thought. That's definitely what he thought.
But, they essentially developed all of the math that we know of a black hole and a wormhole, plugged it into a computer, and then spat out the imagery we saw on screen.
Really?
So the math for the black hole, for the wormhole works and is visualized in a way we've never seen before. They wrote scientific papers off the back of the technology they used in the movie.
Okay, so the bit where it's like we're going down like a corridor kind of thing, and it's like whoosh, and then the bit's like whoosh, and it's just going like
more
this.
so just before that, when they go into it, as they're going into the wormholes.
So not when he's like
When they're in
Going-
the tunnel, that's artist.
Oh no, not the bit with the sand dust kind of like that sandy kind of dust stuff going. The bit before where it's like we're kind of on this like it's like two kind of vibing things and one's kind of going down and it's just endlessly going that way and the other's going. And you know it's a big kind of sheet of thing and it's moving the energy kind of all the.
That's the black hole.
That's the black hole.
Which also,
so that's not just
so
that's not creative interpretation. That's just
mathematically is what it would look like, including the glow around. And what you're seeing, visualized is a 3-dimensional sphere with a disc, and that's why it looks like kind of two circles because it's light is bending when there's a singularity and everything is being pulled into it. So matter, light, everything is being pulled into one point. Light bends in such a way that you get kind of a spherical disc folding over the top of each other and into each other in a very strange way.
There's one shot in particular that also just in terms of before
the scale.
But the actual ship. Had a great word for it. It's a spaceship Ferris wheel.
Oh yeah.
And the spaceship Ferris wheel, the way it's like, and it's just like spinning and the way it has that kind of spinning, almost like a Beyblade where it's spinning.
Makes its own gravity.
Right, is that what it's doing?
Yeah.
Cool.
Which they'll end up doing, far in the future when they solve gravity on a much bigger scale. But it's the same principle.
Oh.
Spinning, cylindrical. Yeah.
Have you seen Elysium?
Yes.
It's very Elysium-y, yeah? With the way, like, because I could be wrong. I saw that movie once, like...
Well, Elysium is very Halo.
Oh, okay.
Because
as in the game?
He was developing a Halo movie for a long time. Then he stopped developing
So
a Halo movie. Then he went and made Elysium, and people were like, that looks a lot like Halo.
Because to me, Halo's a game I played a bit of, but mostly like 2-player. We like just on a skirmish world or whatever you call it. I don't play games. I don't know. You just shoot each other, and there's no story or whatever that's called. The story elements are never. There's lots of aliens, and you're a Master Chief or whatever. But to me, that doesn't make sense. So it's the actual Halo. To me, all that is like there's an opening. The music, when you got the tile screen, like play a game, settings, all that shit.
Yeah. And
there's a Halo. That's the only Halo I know of Halo. And apart from that, Halo's the name. And there's like a Halo kind of thing in the sky or whatever. The music though is so good.
It's the same premise as Elysium, I think.
Yeah, is that
big?
Yeah, and everything. If you're up there, you're looking down. The same as at the end when he's hitting the.
I remember seeing a bunch of concept art developed by that director. You know what we were talking about before about how director sensibilities appeal to you?
Yeah.
I actually thought that guy was right on the cusp of like he did District 9 and I really loved it. Then he did Elysium and I was like,
that's fine.
The visuals are still there, but you lost me a little on some of the story elements. I'm not sure it all worked.
It's a bit broad stroked.
Yeah.
If I remember, it's very like kind of. I get it.
And then when we get to Chappie, it's now your sensibilities of whoa, you've gone in a completely different
direction.
direction.
Those guys with the tattoos are too much for me.
They're
just too much. Like it's offensive to say someone's too much for me, but I see him and I'm like, he freaks me out, man. And I'm like, that's too much.
It's like when I was like 14, I loved the Black Eyed Peas. And it would be like if
I love the Black Eyed Peas now. They're the best.
Yeah, I mean, I say that because I like the music they made, Elefunk, Monkey Business. Those albums are like the ones I really love.
Yeah.
And the stuff before and the stuff after, sure, I'll get on board.
I see what
but
you're saying.
that is
that's Black Eyed Peas too. Yeah.
So it'd be like if I made a movie 10 years later and cast the Black Eyed Peas in a movie about a robot, and that's essentially what he's doing. He loved that band, and then. And
then 10 years later, are people like us sitting on couches that are less comfy, being like, Fergalicious, more like Ferganot-licious or something. To be clear, Fergalicious is my favourite song. So, just to be clear, I'm not mocking that song. It's the best.
I'm glad you love the Black Eyed Peas.
I love the Black Eyed Peas so much. One of my favourite bands. Like, really.
I've known you for so long, I didn't know.
Oh, I only got into them in the last 8 months.
Oh. Wow.
Where Is the Love was on a So Fresh album I had as a kid, so I really liked that song.
But for me, or something.
For me, it was like a period of I was in high school and all the good bands, because everything I listened to was when I was from 15 to 18. I just didn't listen to it then. Now I listen to it. All I listen to is like just stuff like that. Like I don't know, I can't even think of another one. Like Avril Lavigne, I didn't like her at the time. She's awesome, really good. You know, Katy Perry's the same. I was like, at the time,
You
now I'm
missed
like,
it, and then,
yeah. I don't know.
It's the best time to be alive now. You can just consume everything from any era.
You're the first person to say that this year. The year being 2020 for people
That's
watching
why
this in the post-apocalyptic future where you're sitting there and there's got 7 things of corn and you're like, oh, do you mind if I have that piece of corn? They're like, it doesn't matter, it's all corn, cunt.
Well,
Eat it.
you in the future, that's why the world fell apart, because you didn't appreciate...
Katy Perry?
Yeah.
Or Black Eyed Peas? Or what were you
all
saying?
of the above.
All the artists of 2009.
Yeah.
Best year.
Because the more time we spend just listening to dumb Black Eyed Peas music, the less time we have to beat each other with, weapons and murder each other. So that's what music's good for. It's when tens of thousands of people can congregate to go and just listen to 4 people sing about dumb shit. That's way better than mass protests and Trump v. Biden and all these things.
They should just be having Black Eyed Peas concerts instead.
Yeah.
Kieran, I feel like we're getting to our conclusion time, which we've started now. We have conclusion time. What did you think of Interstellar? No, sorry. I drew it once. I feel like someone on the internet's like, they didn't make that joke. It's a bad joke to make, but they should make it. So I did it, but I half did it. Like as soon as I did it, I referenced that I did it, which probably ruined it. But
now you're referencing that. How much more meta can we get?
This is I don't know. This is pretty good, man. It's a pretty fucking spectacular movie. It doesn't have certain elements that really get me in with a lot of these other ones. They're the big ones, the Batman ones, just for obvious reasons, Batman and stuff. But
you said something earlier that made me think. You said I've watched Inception so many times, and that's actually, funnily enough, one of Nolan's movies where I feel like the emotional center of the film isn't as fleshed out and doesn't work as well.
Oh, yeah.
And we never actually really get any time with him and his wife, and we never actually ever get to develop the relationship. We're only ever told about it. We only ever get to see a flashback of it, and we never get any of it. Whereas the daughter-father relationship in Interstellar, to me, is the anchor point and beating heart of the movie, and it really does work. So there's an enormous disconnect between what audiences experience there and then what I experienced later and whatever instead they felt their disconnect was, where I'm sitting there going, well, Inception works for me. It's a spectacular film, but I wouldn't call it an incredibly emotional film. Whereas this really permeates a lot of that emotion in ways that I felt Inception didn't. Inception is so many other things, and it's doing so many other things, and almost the emotional relationship in the film is informing the character more than it's meant to make me care. That's what it's doing, and that's what it's succeeding at.
I'm trying to figure, as you're saying this, because I'm just so the opposite, where I'm like, no. I remember the day I watched Inception where I realized it was the best action movie. And every time I watch it, I'm like, it just sings for me. There's that bit where they go down the elevator and they have it all out and the whole thing comes out and he's just screaming and she's on the other side and she's like, I'm going to kill myself. And he's like, no, please do not do this. No.
But even then, we're not given anything.
Oh, for me though, for me, I feel like because
she doesn't think she's real. She thinks she's in a dream. She's disconnected.
That's it. For me, in Interstellar, his goal is to save humanity. So I think maybe part of me is like, who fucking cares if his daughter is sad? Fuck her. Humanity is more important than her feelings. That's just a fact. It just is. Maybe not for him. Maybe not for her. For sure. Me as the viewer watching this movie, Inception is only about him using dream nonsense to get back to his family. And throughout the film, we have this crazy antagonistic fun girl who's things happen and then he's like, she's dead. And she's like, what? What are you telling me? Robin from Batman. And he's telling, and just everything that kind of builds up. And then we have this moment of him being like, oh yeah, Inception, the whole thing, the whole basis of this movie is that you can't incept someone. You can't do it. And he's like, I did. And I made my wife kill herself. So his wife kills herself because he inceptioned her. I don't know. To me, that's just so fucked. I actually can't think of another film right off the top of my head that just hits me so hard.
Well, he incepted her to save her. which
but
is
it
what
backfires,
yeah.
and it's that tragic. I don't know, man. All those scenes where they're like walking through just this impossible universe of impossibilities, and he's just like, "I'm gonna spark a thing." And also that song, "Time," it's the best song ever made. I've watched so many videos of people clipping together like every scene from Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, but with that music. I'm just like, oh yeah. So but I just think that works so much more in terms of like this character uses the thing that we're watching, the movie's kind of basis, this insane. It could just, I don't know. I just feel like if it was just a shitty action movie.
So what if Matthew McConaughey crushed his daughter with gravity, then it would have worked.
I mean, you're saying that. I'm not saying no. But obviously that's silly. No. But obviously that's a different thing. But I think it just comes down to like a shitty action movie. Movies can be whatever they want, but I think a lesser Inception has the world of Inception. He's like, we're going into dreams of dreams, and we're dreaming our dreams, and so many dreams. But they wouldn't use that Inceptionness to murder his wife and to have that. A lesser action film being Inception wouldn't have this. Just to me, I think the way it builds and just I don't know. I love all that stuff and just the horror
I agree
of
with
killing
everything.
yourself and doing that. And he was like, we got out of the dream, we kill ourselves. And there's that fun, like, when you wake up from dream, I don't know, it always reminds me of Stephen Moffat. He grabs the thing like, oh, you die in your dreams, and then you wake up. What if you wake up from your dream, but you're like, I gotta kill myself again? But you're like, no, but you're in real life, and now that's real bad. Now that's real bad.
I think people are more attached to the concept of Inception than they are to the emotion, to the characters, to what's actually permeating throughout the film. And I think people pay a lot more attention to those actual things in Interstellar. And I think that they're actually on fairly even footing. I might even edge out, personally, Interstellar.
No, well, obviously, yeah.
But there's no significant relationship development in Inception, nor does it ever even attempt to do that. The closest that we even get to that is Alan Page and not Robin.
I literally forgot it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I forgot before when I said Robin. I was like, I can't even bother explaining if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yes. But that's the closest thing we get, and that is
nothing.
Say
I was about to say that's nothing.
It's nothing. It's literally a kiss. That's it.
But
there's no emotional core.
No,
the emotional core is all talked about, flashbacked, memory-ified, all of these things, but it is never actually required to be a part of the movie. It's only required to be a part of the plot, to advance what's going on, to inform our central character. But we never actually really have to fall in love with their relationship the way Interstellar asks you to fall in love with that relationship.
I think because the twist and the actual revelation and when it reveals at the end, that works for me. I think the building blocks of having his nightmare version of his ex-wife popping up as this like nightmare dream. She's like his Freddy Krueger. She's like, I'm gonna come and hurt. Actually, that's bizarrely accurate. That's exactly what she is.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm hearing you say all this. I'm like, there's no scene where they're like running through a cornfield and I'm getting all their characters. But you know what? For me, that works so much better because he's at that point where he's trying to get back to something, and we don't ever get a sense of it.
And I'm not even debating that. So that's just why I'm cutting it off. Because I'm in complete agreement. I'm just saying that because the movie never even attempts to try those things, it can't fail at them. Because she isn't a character, there's no expectation of anything. Interstellar is actually trying to build something, I think, tangible. For me, that works. For a lot of people, it doesn't. But it is actually a thing. Whereas Marion Cotillard in Inception is not a character. She's a figment of someone's imagination and a memory and all of these things.
It's actually funny because you literally said she's a figment of his reality, and I'm like, that's actually what really fascinates me. Is like we never see her really.
Yeah.
And I like that. I'm gonna say it because it's the same as Psycho's Bates Motel, the Psycho prequel, season 5. The mum is dead. Spoilers. But it's just him and his mum, and the mum's like, this and that. You can't lock me in this house, because he thinks that she faked her death and came home, but he just dragged her body home. So he's yelling at his mum, and his mum's like, "You can't lock me in this house. I faked my death for you." And he's like, "Fuck you." And we're just like, this dude is just yelling at himself in a house. And then sometimes we'll just cut to a wide, and he's just like he's hugging his mum. Then we'll just cut to him being like, "Why do I feel so lonely?" And he's just alone in a room. There's no food anywhere. And it's incredible because it's just a dude fucking losing his mind, but he doesn't even realize it because he thinks he's having It's like if we filmed 100 episodes of this, and then I suddenly just edited them all, and it was just me yelling at myself. But not even that. I would then be yelling at myself, and then I'd be like, "Well, Jax, actually, you're wrong. Interstellar's good." And I'm like, "You're fucking wrong!" And it's that
and
to
you're
me.
actually in an abandoned house right now. There's no lights or anything.
Oh no. My Nokia phone is filming 15-second clips, yeah. No, but it's just, that to me is really fascinating. And I just suddenly, as soon as you said it's a figment, because it's not her really, but, yeah, I know. And we're talking about too much. Sorry, I'll just try and wrap it up.
Yeah.
One character does say, "Oh, how was Marv before?" Oh, no, Marv. Maeve, sorry, thank you. "How was she before she died?" And he just goes, "Oh, she was lovely." And that's just such a contrast to the murderous psycho instigator we're meeting.
Yeah.
And she's kind of a sexy, suave spy feel, you know, in that first scene. It's like, I mean, that's how I always remember when she rocks up and she's like, "Oh, you're here at the Singapore party," or wherever we are. And he's like, "Oh, yeah." And I'm like, "Who is this?" And then it's just a fucking figment. It's a fake, yeah, I don't know. That really fascinates me. Whereas sad girl who's a teenager, like who's a child, and then suddenly actress.
Well, to tie all of what we're saying together,
Yes.
I think a lot of the time when Christopher Nolan going for high emotional punch doesn't quite work, but when he's gone for like plot adrenaline pace, it really does. And I think that might be the difference between Inception and Interstellar, is that Interstellar's asking a little bit more of you. It's asking you to get in with these characters a bit more. And maybe while Christopher Nolan is an exceptional filmmaker, that's where his faults lie, in convincing the audience of these relationships, of what they mean. I mean, it's very, very clear that there's a point in his life where he became a parent and his filmmaking shifted focus, because
Is that starting Inception?
Probably, yeah. That's where we really get that sense of like children being like, you know, this of overwhelming import, the future, and that's the crux of the film, and everything is hinging on it. And it's probably times up to where he had kids, maybe a little before that.
Yeah.
He had kids, and then he's, you know, confronted with the reality that this is all that matters to him in the world, and now we see that permeating into his art. And we see that in Inception, and we see it even further in Interstellar. And for me, it rings very true. I really believe what I'm seeing there. I'm really seeing this man processing these ideas, processing ideas about mortality, about legacy, about children, about being a ghost for your children, about willingly accepting your fate, and realizing that you're here to be a memory for someone else is like a really big idea, I think, illustrated in a way that I hadn't seen before. And I think more than any of what I've just said, what this movie does really well is it's a fantastic demonstration of gravity and time and scientific principles that I think are just outside of a lot of people's grasp. And he does such a magnificent job time and time again of taking impossible ideas and then packaging them into 2.5 hour just exquisite masterpieces. Memento does it reversing time. Inception does it dreams within dreams. Here we have time being played with in an entirely different way. Batman Begins just does it non-linearly.
It's almost like, I was going to say classical, which sounds the same, but I don't know, that almost feels like an old school kind of non-linear. I haven't seen it in a long time, but it's not tacky or cheap or anything, but just like a kind of the way to just kind of, I don't know if that's the right phrase.
Time is something that we see throughout all his movies. Really
exceptionally good at, like, that's the best stuff in this, is when it gets, and I'm going to have to refer Just like, it makes me go like, oh, he's getting his Moffat Doctor Who kind of gloves on when like an old woman is like, I'm your daughter, and he's like, no, and they're just, it's all like, what if time was fucked and shit, cunt, and you're just like, well, that was really, really fucked. I can't imagine looking at my daughter and being like, you're old. No. And the daughter being like, go find your love. Who's younger than me? And I'm like, oh no. And all that stuff is really great. It really does work. Yeah, there's just like that aspect where I'm like, why am I not just like so in? Because I've been so into that, like that kind of nonsense in Doctor Who is my favourite. When the time gets all fucked up and people are old and young, and they do that in Heroes one episode, which is like, I'm all old. Go find another love hero. And he's like, no, you're too old. It's gross now. You're so gross now. I will leave. But I don't know. I think it's because it is so sprawling and epic though that a lot of it overwhelms me. And I think just because I'm like, I wonder if I'd seen this for the first time this time, I probably wouldn't be as cynical. Whereas some aspects of it just kind of stayed with me forever with like being like I don't know, this movie to me is like, I saw it once, and that bookcase scene, apart from like, I don't know, you know, he's coming into it and like certain things really surprised me with how great it was, but there is parts where he's just running through like, you know, sci-fi behind the bookcase, and I'm like, that's what I remember. Like, and that really has stayed with me, really oddly negatively. It's, I don't know. I kind of feel like I want to like kick myself, go back and be like, just rewatch it once a year later, you know. I don't know.
For me, that sequence is just, I mean, it's a fantastic, practical, phenomenally practical sequence of...
I couldn't believe the behind the scenes. I was like, what, these all kind of string, like flicking actual...
But it's also everything that the film has been up to that point. It's fundamentally, you know, the relationship with the daughter, the effect of gravity and time, the real world visualization of that. I mean, if you're following through all the points of the film up to this point, what else can happen but this? Like, it just, for me, when he falls into it and I realize what's going on, and I'm just like, oh my God, they found it. And he's shouting and banging, but you can't auditory.
Sound, nothing comes
None
through.
None of that, just gravity. That's all that happens. That's all you can affect. It's all for naught.
You know what? It might just be that. It might be that weird, just gravity is like not something that maybe comes into your mind when you think of things like that. Like for me, it's, I feel like that. Like I almost have to like push past the door to like get into it a bit. Like when he's all like, and the lines are ratcheting up, I'm like, yeah, gravity or whatever.
They might have been able to make it simpler. Like just thinking about where we are right now. Imagine 30 years in your future, you're able to view this room from a tesseract at all moments in time. And you can affect the gravity of that beer bottle. And if you knock that beer bottle over, you will start a course of events that will change the course of history.
And I've got to lead it in a certain direction.
So you can knock that one, or if you knock mine, something completely different will happen. And that's almost the idea behind it, is that just the ability to push gravity to communicate some message back in time is enough to turn the hinges of the fate of humanity. And I don't know, it works for me because all the things the film has presented up to that point feel enormously, and I use this word so much, but it's succinct.
I thought you were going to say perfectly splendid.
And then someone else uses those words. But it succinctly encapsulates all of the things the movie has been presented in one very easy, digestible package. And we know what's going on, and we can see how time has been kind of stretched out into like fifth dimensions into three, so that us three-dimensional beings can view this space and interact with it, and us as the audience can follow what's happening and see what he's doing.
Reminded me kind of like a film thing. You got like, it's like each second or frame or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
And it reminded that if you did that, but like put them down into rows, and then had rows like that, and then maybe made each one a scene or whatever, and it's like, I don't know, it's pretty wild stuff. And I like this. I reckon I probably had like a 5 out of 10 experience the first time. It's more than that, easy.
It's so baffling to me because I just feel like if the...
I also don't think the space... I don't think any of the docking... I don't think any of the stuff that this time really... Like, just... I don't know. Like, the spaceship's just flying and he's like, I've got to feel the air and shit, bro. And he's driving. I'm just like, I'm feeling it. Like, I'm just sitting there being like, shit.
This
like,
is the best
pilot.
pilot.
Like, feeling it. Yeah. But it's like, it has a feeling like it feels really like intense. Like there's a bit where the ship's going like just like shipping we're on the side or whatever. And I just feel like he just went I just put a camera here and just send it up. And he's like, are you still alive, ship man? And the guy's like, no, this is alright, Christopher. No. I just feel like they're doing it, and I didn't appreciate that the first time.
That's an interesting part of the cinematography angle is that all of the spaceship sequences, you're either given...
they're in space.
No, they're attached to the ship. The camera is attached
to
the
ship. Yeah, and so that gives that real feeling.
Yeah, because that's how we've viewed all real space footage up to this point.
I don't watch space stuff,
Sure you have. You've seen the moon landing. You've seen the...
But I don't know what I've seen, or I've seen like... Transformers 3, you've seen, this is the moon landing, but the Transformers are in it. I don't know what I've seen, real or not real.
You've seen ISS footage, you've seen so much stuff that's crept into your subconscious.
It kind of reminds me of Cars when you put it on the side of the car though,
Oh, really?
That's what it reminded me of. It's like when someone gets a shot of the car and the door like opens, it's like on the door. That's more what it reminded me of, from like, you're getting it onto a thing so you can get that view. I've really not seen space stuff. Like, I haven't seen the moon landing in the whole video.
Really? I feel like you have. I
feel
like you can't have avoided it.
No, but I've seen like bits.
But
bits and clips.
Every camera is attached to the ship. It's, what I'm saying is it's not something you consciously recognize, but it's in your unconscious mind.
I was just about to say, because unconscious.
Everything you're viewed from space that's real is attached to a ship. So every piece of footage in this movie is attached to a ship.
I was just realizing how they...
Where else can...
Sorry, I just...
Yeah.
Cut all that. Make me look like
No,
I don't keep it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, I've just suddenly like had this image of like a cameraman in space without a ship, and I'm like, of course it's attached to a fucking ship. Yeah.
But there are shots like that where they're really showing you the scale of the ship up against Saturn or the black hole or the
Saturn looks
wormhole.
Very nice. I don't know. Maybe it's just the ring around it.
It's just clean, and they're focused on the simple things about lighting in space, and it's the little details. Like in every shot in the Star Wars films, you can always see the stars. They're all perfectly exposed, no matter what's going on.
Yeah, okay.
That's not how cameras work.
Right, okay,
if you're exposing for something that's bright and has lights on it, or the light of the sun is shining onto the side of Saturn, then the blackness of space is black. And you can't see those stars. They're not in focus anymore. They're in focus, sorry. They're not exposed anymore because the light emanating from a star very far away is very small. So when, if I took this light outside into the black of night and turned the light on and then exposed my camera for that light, all you would see is the light and blackness all around it.
Stars.
Exactly. Because to expose for
disappear.
If you expose for the stars, that would be so overexposed, you wouldn't be able to see anything.
I understand,
So these principles are the things that I think they're taking into the cinematography.
Cool.
So when you see Saturn silhouetted, the sun is, off to this angle. It's very stark, contrasted lighting, and then a tiny little ship. And immediately, the sense of scale is there, the sense of lighting is there, everything matches perfectly, the exposure is correct. Your unconscious mind and all the footage of all the footage of space you've ever seen, it's going, this makes sense. To my internal logic.
That makes
sense
to me.
When you see Star Wars, a ship flying through, there's something going, this is a movie. This is fiction.
There's no space stuff in the new Mandalorian, but I feel like what you're saying is the same. I'm just looking at something.
It can look good.
It looks,
but not real.
I actually enjoyed it more. I to be honest, but it's just
because
if you've seen that episode, you know exactly why I like it more. It's got a big muscle with teeth, but it does a thing I like. But it doesn't look real. Whereas this, when you're saying that stuff, I'm like, you know what? That's probably why when the little Ferris wheel spaceship's going, and it's like a dot on the screen, and then there's that big. That was so... I couldn't believe what I was looking at.
To bring it back to Star Wars again, there's a moment in The Last Jedi where they use this principle very effectively.
Oh.
And it's maybe the most breathtaking sequence in the film.
The hyperdrive scene.
The Holdo maneuver.
Yes.
And
don't call it that.
What they do is they change the exposure of the virtual cameras in space so that what it's doing is what the imaginary narrative of the universe is this spaceship is crashing into all these spaceships and it will cause a really bright light that would overexpose the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So the fake camera, we're going to decrease the sensitivity of the sensor so that when the ship crashes, it'll be a bright light, but it won't go white. The screen won't go white. We'll still be able to see what's happening because everything's been darkened down. So you can't see the lights in the ship. And it silhouettes it in a weird way.
Yeah, it looked black and white to me, like they've changed.
Yeah, they do a very slight shift. Because normally when you see a ship in Star Wars, like everything's exposed perfectly because they've done a bunch of passes of it. It's a miniature and they've like shot a light pass and a darker pass and they put all the footage on top of each other and then they put it onto a background with a planet and then the stars. And it's a bunch of separate elements integrated together. It's not a single exposure. But then for some strange reason, this one moment in Last Jedi, they go, let's approach this like it's real. And it works really well.
That's probably why it's so standoutish then?
Of course, yeah.
Interesting.
Because Star Wars is never like that. It's hyper real, it's exaggerated. Wow. There's sound in space. You can see everything all the time. It's a fairy tale with a science fiction backing.
Yeah. Just as a funny side note, I have one mate, I haven't talked to him for a very long time, but when I talked to him about Last Jedi, I was like, oh, you're the internet. You're the people on the internet that just hate it for just all the wrong reasons, because there's issues. Let's not get into it. But he was like, there's one good bit. And I'm like, yeah, the explosion bit. And he's like, yeah. It just that was funny when you say that. I'm like, I wonder if subconsciously his brain just connected with all those reasons, because that is a spectacular sequence.
Yeah.
Like, just in terms of everything about it. It's really interesting to hear that kind of real life application of what they actually thought about doing. Because to me, it's just like, whoa. Like I can't even remember.
Well, I
remember it went so slow, and the sound. I think the sound was the thing that always stuck with me. Is it goes out for a second, or it goes like sucks out of the room or something like that.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it for quite a while, to be honest. I don't think I've watched much. I've only watched The Mandalorian since Rise.
Yeah. It's a right move.
Are there any amazing, fun space/film facts that you know from Interstellar, your favorite movie? Is there any other things? Like, do you know that there was like a room where they spun it? And it's like, they really spun that movie. That's Inception, by the way. Anything I say is Inception. My fun facts are Inception, because who cares about sad corn boy in a bookcase magic world?
Christopher Nolan made a profit off the corn.
I'm laughing, but I don't know why. Like, sorry. What do you mean? What does that possibly mean?
They grew real corn.
Of course they did.
Real practical corn for that practical farm.
Do you think that's because...
And Christopher Nolan made money off it. He's the most frugal filmmaker, working with a $200 million budget.
Sorry. No, I'm sorry. I want to know exactly what you mean. What is frugal? Sorry.
Tied us.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Interesting.
It's a nice way of saying it.
Yeah, I actually think it meant the opposite. Like someone who just like accidentally makes profits or something. I don't know. Like the opposite of a tied us. She makes money. I don't know why I thought that was a word that makes sense. Doesn't matter. Cut it all. Do you think the reason that Christopher Nolan had to make his own fields of corn is because he got to set on like this guy's farm? And he's like, hey, nice to meet you, corn farmer. And the corn farmer's like, nice to meet you, whoever the fuck you are. And I like the idea he doesn't know who he is. And then they get to the start, and he's like, all right, so we're going to ride through this part of the cornfield, and then, you know, for the next shot, we'll ride through this. And the guy's like, what do you mean, through my corn? Like, my food? And they're like, oh. And then Christopher Nolan's like, all right, we'll buy that cornfield, we'll make the corn, then we'll crush.
There was no corn in the place they wanted to shoot. So they picked the environment first, and then they decided, and then they said, let's grow the corn here. And then A guy who
Let's
knew
grow the corn.
the guy who knew about growing the corn said, "We can't grow corn here."
Oh my
Christopher
god.
Nolan said, "Fuck you.
Yes, he did.
We're gonna grow the corn here." And then they grew so much corn that they made money on the corn. And that's
And
it.
they destroy so much corn, so
Even while making money.
Yeah.
They drove through the corn and made money off the corn at the same time.
it was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, so it's funny, and I think it is actually suggestive of something larger about him as a filmmaker, funnily enough, is that he still has a very, very practical mindset about pushing the budget, even if that budget is extraordinary, as far as it can go.
Yeah.
And hearing him say things like that make me realize, no, he is actually really, really invested in the production. He is a producer of this film as much as he's a director.
And the writer and all
And
that stuff.
and he understands these elements a lot more than I think a lot of other directors maybe even have time for.
Dude, if we're making corn, I'm not making a profit of that corn. Oh, actually, no, I say that. I'm like, maybe
Well,
that's the only reason you're able to invest in corn.
No, it's more like here's $200 million from a studio, and then you still go out of your way to do that and be frugal and like do it in such a way that it's making money, and he's cutting corners like a independent filmmaker, but
I
he's
see what you're
working
saying.
with a
So
the
instead of the
biggest
$2
budget
million
there is.
making would be $5 million. He's making 200 feel like 500.
And I don't even
That's
think
what you're trying to say.
this. Yeah,
so,
exactly.
no,
This
that's
movie.
awesome. I feel that every time I watch a movie.
This movie isn't even 200 million.
Right, how much is
So
it?
I think it's like 125. I could be wrong.
Wow.
I need to double check. So don't. I will double check.
There'll be a number on screen, and he'll be like, "I'm wrong."
But
Or
it's
you'll
not
be right.
200. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
200.
Like
It's not a Marvel movie yet. This is the thing.
they don't look real. They
Have
don't
you
look-
ever seen that triangle? You can make it
I've
fast and good.
And
You
it's
can make
not-
it fast and
it's-
cheap.
And it's that thing where it's like, if it's two of them, it's not the third. If it's these two, it's not that.
And it perfectly fits. And Christopher
Perfect Venn
Nolan
diagrams.
takes that triangle and throws it out the window.
Yeah. He's
Because-
like, look at this square where everything is perfect.
Yeah, he does it. He does it pretty in an orderly manner. He's not doing it as fast as the Marvel boys. They're pumping out movies like no one I've ever
Fast
seen.
is the most irrelevant, I think.
But that's why their movies don't look as good,
Mm,
and that's why they're not as cheap, because they're fast.
yeah.
The Marvel movies are fast more than any of the others. So their triangle is like, we got all the money, we're doing it really quick, we're doing it in less than 2 years, and we're pumping it out. And I think that there's quite a lot lost there. Like, the Spider-Man movies are never going to really be like a classic Spider-Man movie like those Sam Raimi ones were, because there's just
But I know people who think Homecoming's like the only good Spider-Man movie, and that's what I've said. People have said that to me. So it's like, it's just
it's a
each
good
to their
movie,
own, you know what I
but
mean?
it's
though?
not.
But it's a
It's
high
not
school
as
film.
much a movie.
But it's a fun high school movie, and that Spider-Man just happens to be in as well. Oh, then fucking Tony Stark's it. It's like, I don't know. For me, it works a lot better than like the other two before the Sam.
For
Raimi
me, it
ones.
works as episode 18 in the 23-part Infinity Saga.
And that sounds not that necessarily your tone, but just I think that phrase sounds negative. I think that's the best compliment you can give this franchise. That's why it's so good to me. Because like, who cares if Ant-Man 2's fine?
Well, I think the Marvel movies blur the line between television and film
I'd
in
say
a
it's just a long form TV series.
Sure.
But nothing about it feels like a movie in the best way. Where you can watch Infinity. I went to see Infinity War when I was in Thailand, and I met like 5 people at the hostel that night, and I just randomly convinced them all to come along. 2 of them, not seeing a single one except for they knew who Iron Man was, and I'm trying to convince them all the time. This other guy had seen all of them and stuff, and it's like, I don't know, it worked. They were able to watch it. That was a movie, but it didn't really make sense. And I don't know. I just think it's like if I was to show you Lost season 1's finale, and you hadn't seen the rest of the season, you'd be like, it's not bad, it's this and that, but I'm a bit lost. You fucking should be, cunt. You missed 22 parts, like, and I think that's like the best part of it is that like, yeah, I don't know, like Civil War shouldn't make sense if you haven't seen them, and I don't know, I really like that as a cohesive thing, and to be able to like, you know, it's better that than it be a TV series, and Thanos looks kind of shit, because that's what it would be. It would just get a TV series that's the Avengers movies, and they'd all have these episodes, but it would just not look as good. Whereas we get a TV series, but Thanos is like got stubble and like shaves, you know, and like there's that kind of detail on a big purple raisin man, and I just feel like that's awesome, you know.
Yeah.
That they're willing to spend that much money, you know. That being said, I don't give a fuck if Black Widow comes out on my goddamn phone or anything. Who gives a fuck? Actually, unless you have more things, I think an interesting thing to wrap up on is, I'm really curious, and we've probably discussed it before, but I can't remember. Do you want to wait for Tenet to come out in cinemas in another 3 years, or do you want to let them? Or do you want them to give it to you on streaming so you can watch it on your big ass TV with your really great headphones and stuff?
For me, it doesn't matter because I'll see it both on my TV and in cinemas whenever that becomes available.
Exactly, because they're going to put it back out eventually at some time, and if it's a good movie, fingers crossed.
I don't even think it has to be a good movie.
Yeah, right.
Like he's earned so much. I mean, I know it'll be good enough that I'll go see it at the cinema. You know,
even if it's terrible, it'll be amazing.
If it comes out,
his terrible is like at a level that other people like wish they could even imagine getting to, and I think that for me is the real thing that I noticed watching Interstellar. Is I have issues, but they're not like.
What would you say is your biggest fundamental issue with the movie?
Honestly, the bit where she's like, "It's you, Dad. You're my ghost." For me, I'm just like, why? Because the movie's coming to a close. You know what it reminds me of? In Breaking Bad, in the 3rd or 4th last episode, for no reason other than the show's wrapping up and there's not another moment in the show for it to happen, Walter White just goes, "Jesse, I fucking killed the heroin junkie, Jessica Jones. I killed her. I watched her just bleed out. Like, she throws up and I didn't save her. I made her die. It's my fault." And Jesse's like, "Why would you tell me this?" He's like, "It's the end of the series. I have to tell you because my next moment, my next stepping stone to the end is saving you. So you have to be at your lowest and I have to be at my lowest." And to me, it just felt like a script note. It didn't feel like a character beat that made sense in the moment. It felt like they had to have that moment happen because it happened in the show.
But Jesse is the one who caused this moment to happen, where he loses everything, when everything tumbles apart. So is it not conceivable that Jesse ripping all of these things away from him is what causes him to? He has no power left in that situation. The Nazis are like,
Walter just tells it.
Exactly, because the Nazis are like, "We're going to let you live, and we're going to let you have a barrel. You better not ever fucking come near us again. And we're going to take your boy, and we're going to cook meth, and we're going to do whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah.
So you can fuck right off."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So the only thing he has left is anger for Jesse, which is why I think he lashes out in that moment. But at the same time, there is a part of me that agrees with what you're saying, that it is very convenient that he would just remember that moment in time to lash out with, and it's the one unresolved plot point.
It just feels
but
like
is it not more because you had that in the back of your head that you were waiting for that to bubble to the surface, so when it did you were like, that wasn't a satisfactory way for you to do that?
It just feels like, I don't know, it feels like to me it's like this, it just feels like it's like he's like at 0 out of 10, let's put him at -1. Like it's just extra thing to throw on. It just feels like as if that would come to your mind at that point, as if it felt like a TV show moment where it's like the characters aren't breathing and living in the world right now. They're in their 3rd last episode and conclusions have to happen, and they're just saying shit, they're doing shit, and they're putting it all out there. I've never rewatched the final season. I hate those last episodes.
Yeah, but back to Interstellar.
Yes.
So what about it does not work for you? What do you think it is that is not enabling you to accept that she figures it out in that moment? Seeing those things again, seeing the room again, coming to the realization.
I don't think that I understood until you put it so succinctly earlier that it is the first time she's been back there since she was like an actual child without a proper brain. Not able to actually come to this. But I just think that if
she half put it together already.
If she
knew there was a person. She had a feeling. She thought there was something going on. But her dad was there at that point with her. Why would she think it's him? Yeah. Then he goes. Then she studies gravity her entire life.
It's such a big leap that I think because I don't think that we're given enough with her. Because for me, she's there as a kid, and that's a character. And then Matthew McConaughey goes off, and we get a great bunch of really fun space stuff for a bit. And he comes back off the planet, and now she's old. And that character I find a disconnect with. And just her being back and her doing all the stuff, I just don't find that like she's learned all the science stuff and all the gravity stuff, but I don't feel like I've learned that with her. I don't feel like
because she doesn't feel that either. She even says that.
Right,
like
okay.
I kept telling people it wasn't me, but no one believed me. Like
Yeah.
she, even in her old age on her deathbed, has this sense of I didn't earn what I got, and I'm a hero. When my dad was the hero, you know, he sent this information through to me. You know, even when he says it's named Cooper after me, no, after your daughter, you dickhead.
That's a fantastic moment.
But she and they both did it together, really. So yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, before when you were like, oh, this, I was like, I don't even think I even considered the fact that she hasn't been in that room again. So immediately I was like, oh, that's.
Maybe.
I don't know, when you said before, I was like, I can imagine myself saying all those words to someone who doesn't like it if I made this movie. I'm like, she's never been back. She's. Are you not watching my movie? I put it. She said it twice. How many reinforcements? I honestly
thought this
just didn't work.
I honestly thought this was going to be like Signs, where you were like, it doesn't work, and then you went and watched it and paid attention and looked at it and thought about it, and then you're going to come in and you're going to be like, no, yeah, I see, I get it.
I know, but I think I do see...
You can't help what you feel.
No, I do see it, but it's the same as Arrival, and you're like, but this and that, and that's amazing, and I'm just like, I just thought it was a movie where they weren't going to figure out what the aliens said, and then they did. You know, it's a thing in your brain with like Ex Machina. The whole time I'm like, I cannot wait for the moment they reveal that he's the robot, and then but just for me, the idea of a robot coming in, thinking it's a person forever, to test another robot, and then both realize, I was like, this is like Blade Runner crack right now. This is like hot fire. This is so good. And then he like cuts himself. I'm like, the red herring was more exciting than your whatever it's called when it's not the red herring.
See, for me, watching it, I was like, the script's one step ahead of me. I already had this thought immediately when they introduced this guy, and now they're reassuring me.
We cut it, and I remember you saying if you cut it, now we don't have to worry about that stupid red herring anymore.
Yeah, he's definitely human. They said it.
The start of that movie is so weird though. I've never rewatched it, but I just remember this. But he's in his like computer on his computer's work, and it's just like a surreal thing where I'm like, it's memories on a hard drive or some shit. I'm ahead of you, movie. But it's just a thing where I just think truly the idea of bringing a man in to test a robot, but having him know it's a robot, and he's tricked this robot for 10 years earlier to do the ultimate human test where two humans are humans, but they're actually... To me, I was like, this is the movie. This is it. And so I just, as soon as it wasn't that, I just was like, I'm not as invested. Especially when the twist is, Oscar Isaac just wants to fuck his robots. Great. What an ingenious... What a magnificent idea. It just feels so like...
I feel like there was more to it than that.
She kills him because he's a rapist robot. He makes a bunch of sex slaves. He makes a bunch of sex slaves and she kills him. That's it. That's all the film is in the end.
I think there's more.
There's probably more, but it's not. I'm not very much.
I haven't seen it.
No. For a very long time, no. But that's how I got, and I bet you if I rewatched that film, I'd probably be like, oh, this scene's amazing. But there's a scene where she opens up a drawer and there's just a row of sex bots.
Well, do you know why I never had that thought that got you into that state of thinking, which I think derailed the whole film? The Turing test has to be a human and a robot.
What's the Turing test, right?
The whole concept of the film.
Sorry, okay. Yeah.
Which is what they say. You're doing the Turing,
conversation?
You're testing the robot to see if it's a robot. That's what the Turing test is. It has to be a human and a robot.
But see, to me, how much more exciting...
But then even the movie has that thought and then gets ahead and goes, no, the audience will have this thought too. Let's reassure them. That's why it's brilliant.
To me, that's... But like that...
But it's not. It's just two robots in a room going... Are you a robot?
But that's Blade Runner, like a man testing a robot. That's Blade Runner.
No, Blade Runner is boring and shit.
I actually 100%
You agree.
Yeah. So, could you just repeat the last 4 words you just said then, please?
Blade Runner is boring. If you give me 6 words, and shit.
I was going to try and hold a composition from... You're 100% right. The first Blade Runner, and I have to say first, because 2049 is one of the best movies that I've never rewatched.
I hate being so reductive. It's not just boring and shit. It is also a technical marvel and beautiful, and there are great sequences and scenes in it, but overall, I find it a very frustrating...
It's super boring as shit.
Yeah.
It's super boring as shit, you know.
Yeah.
And it's one of those movies where it's like, I'm happy to argue. Like one of my favorite podcasts. It's not a real, not a real podcast. I'm not doing the same podcast anymore. The best person on movie maintenance. Psycho is his favorite film. He's talking about Jaws all the time. Jaws is terrible. I'll stand by for it. Some films that are classics just absolutely don't work. Blade Runner, though, I think, is objectively uber boring. But I think some of the best scenes are just the two scenes they have, the human interrogating the robot. But it doesn't matter. I just think Ex Machina, it's just, essentially my whole point with that whole thing is that if I'm vibing a thing and I want it to be this, I want it to be this. Like Bates Motel did a certain thing with the two people being a third person, all this thing, and they kind of lost that in season 4. And when I actually looked at the whole series, I'm like, oh, season 4 didn't work for me because they had to separate and do a thing, but because what I gelled with was this one aspect of the show that really gelled for me, and all the other subplots, I'm like, eh. This one aspect gels for me. Ex Machina, I thought it was doing a thing. And how this brings back to Interstellar, I can't remember, but maybe it's just that the thing it's doing didn't gel for me the way it just should. And it's not that the gel is
not... It's the moment that she realizes that it's her father speaking to her through gravity from some inconceivable dimension.
And I don't know why gravity. I think something to do with gravity. It must be less... I'm not able to grasp it. My brain doesn't go latch onto it with like... I don't know. Like I just think there's so many things where I watch something and I just go, that is everything to me. I connect so much. Don't know why this has come out to me. There's a moment in Serenity or Firefly, whichever one, and someone has won a prize, and it's the apocalypse, and it's a single strawberry in a box, and she just...
The first episode.
Right, okay. I just remember being like, I understand the universe now. I understand it 100%. That's like gold. And that connected to me because I can just go to work every day and get a strawberry. It's not a big deal. And that certain things can just connect and you understand it perfectly. You don't need to say anything. And this one, it just didn't work for me. I don't know how. I think I could say this 10,000 different ways, but I think that's just it. It's really great, and one or two moments don't work for me, and for some reason they really compound. Less so this time, because what I really do remember is spinning ship and they're spinning the other way and then they dock, and I was just like, that shouldn't be so good, but that's so good.
I think it's a series of terrific sequences executed with near perfection, with impeccable performances, outstanding character work, just a surprising and bewildering sense of like attention to detail on every component, and it's like science and art meeting at a convergence point that is this film. And for me, it just mixes so many things I love together. I love science fiction, and I really just love drama and really well thought out character work, and the enormous sequences of interstellar travel and breaching wormholes and falling into black holes are as magnificent to me as a man reconciling his daughter before they chase a drone through a cornfield. And the fact all these things are in the same film and work is just, I don't know. You were talking before, when they were intercutting, it really wasn't working for you. To me, I'm just surprised that it is. I'm surprised that it's all forming a cohesive mass that in the end is expertly woven together through the fabric of gravity and time in such a way that everything we've been shown up until this point converges, and then in a narrative sense, in a scientific sense, in a literary sense, in every sense that we have about these characters, and it all comes together. And I don't know, the film has a sense of hopefulness behind it that I think is lacking a lot, and I really understood that thing that Christopher Nolan said that he wanted to inspire in people, was he wanted people to go in and feel it. Most of the audience didn't feel this movie, but Christopher Nolan, if you're listening, I felt this movie. I did.
It's really interesting when you say feel it more than... Well, I think Christopher Nolan, to me, is like the filmmaker where it's an emotional feeling, and then later, like, I can watch The Dark Knight Rises and I will get everything I'm meant to get, but then I'll read comments and be like, you're right, all those things are maybe plot issues, but fuck, I'll sit down and watch it and I'll be like... So funny you just said that, because Christopher Nolan to me is all emotion over story and plot and character and just all the things. Because for me, I can watch any of his movies and just sit there, it starts, build, all the things happen, and I sit there at the end and I'm like, fuck yeah, cunt, that was alright. No, when I say alright, it's fucking spectacular. But then someone can be like, hey, what about this story element? It makes absolutely no sense. I'm like, well, fuck, that made no sense, did it? But guess what? The swelling music, the character, the camera work, the way he builds a story, I'm just so in it. And then someone will be like, what about this bit in Inception? I'm like, well, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. You know, feeling.
Yeah, like the plot hole in Inception is essentially like they don't reconcile the amount of time that is taking place within each dream. For me, that's the big disconnection point.
Really, yeah.
They say time's compounded into each dream.
Isn't it?
So it's like you go into one dream and now we have to spend exponentially more time.
Isn't that what happens?
But then we're a bunch of layers deep and they're like having a shootout in a snowfield and things are happening 3 levels up that are affecting them, but then happening moments later when that should be weeks later. It doesn't really make sense.
For sure.
So Interstellar is a more coherent, scientifically coherent film where I don't care when I'm watching Inception, but in my mind, it's not making sense really.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
Whereas for me, that all makes perfect sense, and they're like, they're saying the words, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm there. But if you say that, I'm like, cool. But remember that bit where they're like in the snow, and it's like, boom, 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 and they're cussing the trucks just drop it, and you know,
exactly.
And I'm just like everything when I visually watch it and it's building, it works. Like they're like, throw him in a bath, and then the water explodes through the walls, and he's all like, oh my god, it's a bath coming at me. And
but even relatively, if it's compounded 7 times or whatever, the water should come in very slowly, shouldn't it? Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. Let's stop talking about Inception.
Or even the truck falling. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, but all that stuff, like for me, because the feeling of it works with what there's... Maybe not, but... the feeling works for me as I sit and watch it, and I think that when it works for everyone, it's working, and then when it doesn't, like I remember you just being like, this shot doesn't make any sense with the composition of in the Dark Knight, where a thing goes flying off a thing, and
the truck hits another truck, and then it falls into the water, and the shots don't line up at all. But the feeling of the moment works.
Feeling of the moment works.
You see a truck hit another truck, and then it drives out into the ocean, and then you make the connection in your head that these two things fit together. Even though when you actually look at the separate elements...
And slow it down.
They don't...
Nonsense,
Yeah, they don't fit together at all.
But it's like... I remember you showing me
that.
And it doesn't make any
difference. That's the illusion of cinema that I love.
I think that's the key. He is perfect in creating an illusion over the feel. Like the feeling overwhelms everything else, and I just think that universally, I mean, I'm only saying this because so many people seem to agree with me with it at the time, where I wasn't like, oh, I'm so sorry for offending you, Interstellar fans, everyone was kind of more on my side, which I can understand your frustration, especially rewatching. But I still had a bit of disconnect, where I just think that emotion, that feeling, just something about it just kind of filtered away. Who knows? Maybe something about bookcases. Maybe people just hate books and they're like, shut up with your books. I don't know. Who knows? Tell us in the comments what the fuck is your issue with Interstellar. Or just give us a yay if you agree with Kieran. I want paragraphs if you disagree and just a yay if you agree. But we're also just a normal podcast because of lockdowns. We've done a lot of just podcast epis. Every episode is a podcast. So if you're fucking sick of seeing our faces, just go to bloody Spotify or whatever. And fuck you for not liking my face or whatever.
I'll translate that for anyone who wants to
And that's a spoiler talk. Wait, well, oh no, I was trying to think of like, maybe more like, no, I kind of, how does Interstellar end? I was going to say something and then like leave my bottle spinning or something, but I'm like, that's the wrong movie.
Shot, or
what's the last shot?
The last shot is Anne Hathaway on the New World walking towards her base with Matthew McConaughey in the new ship on the way to Task.
Just both stand up and walks majestically towards the camera off into space. No, No, answer someone. You'll figure it out.
Thanks for watching Spoiler Talk, where we talk spoilers. I'm Kieran.
And I'm Jax. And this week we spoiled Interstellar. Christopher Nolan's alright though. Yeah.
Next week we're spoiling...
Social Network?
Yeah.
Yes, because The West Wing's great. Everyone should start watching this. Go back in time. Get back that 2 hours.
Affect the gravity. Knock the bottle over.
And watch 2.5 episodes of West Wing because it's really good. Unfortunately, it's better than this. I'm so sorry to call Aaron Sorkin a great writer. I apologise to everyone.
He is.
He's such a great writer. It sings!
I think Social Network is my favourite of his films too. So
what are his films? Can you just list? If you can't,
Few Good Men.
Oh, fantastic! That's the only courtroom drama I like. And I thought it was just because it had a classic film line. I'm watching a movie and then suddenly he's like, "You can't handle the truth!" And it's like, it's pretty good.
I need to get all the Aaron Sorkin movies on.
Yeah.
I had a bunch in my head, and then as soon as you started talking, I got into
sorry.
what you were saying. And then as soon as I realized I had to keep talking, I was like, I lost everything. Aaron
Oh
Sorkin.
my god! Of course he fucking made that film. That
It's
is the
great, and it's so screenplay.
It's so West Wing, man.
Yeah,
It's.
yeah.
Oh.
He loves giving actors just so much to.
But like, I don't know. The thing in West Wing is like he must have talked with all the people that have ever done the politics. Like it's so like it's modern and current.
I actually think the fact that he stayed away from those people, he has a very.
It's so relevant.
He has an idealized sense of how like people communicate and talk.
Oh, it's so nonsense. Yeah, it's
not
beautiful.
real, but it's better
poetry.
than real.
It's poetry. Yeah,
it's better. Yeah,
I've seen. I mean, it's straight up politics, but I've seen the cabinet room, whatever, and they're just like, "You shut up, cabinet minister," and he's like, "Oi, buddy."
That's better.
You shut up, mate.
What you're saying is better than what the reality of Australian politics is.
I mean, I say I've seen it.
Get fucked up. No, he's full. Get in the mirror. He needs to look at himself. Yeah, fuck him. That's what Australian politics is. It's Mad Max.
Yeah. Just no one's in funny outfits. Everyone's in boring suits and ties. Yeah.
Spoiler Talk is produced by KCBN Studios and Space Kraken Media.